Hello friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The name's Chester. Been driving 18-wheelers for the better part of 23 years now. Started when I was 28, right after my construction business went belly up during the housing crash. These days, I mostly haul refrigerated goods across Texas, from the Rio Grande Valley up to the Panhandle. It pays decent, keeps me busy, and my wife June doesn't mind the schedule as long as I'm home for Sunday dinner. This particular incident happened in late August, 2 years back. I was hauling a load of frozen beef from a packing plant in Amarillo down to San Antonio. The route took me along I-27 south, then cutting across on some of the smaller highways through the middle of nowhere, Texas. You know the kind of places I'm talking about. Towns with populations under 500, where the biggest building is usually the grain elevator. It was pushing close to midnight when my fuel gauge started dipping toward the quarter mark. I'd planned to fill up in Lubbock, but construction had me sitting in traffic for nearly an hour, burning diesel while barely moving. Now I was out in the sticks, somewhere between Post and Snyder on Highway 84, watching my range calculator tick down mile by mile. The GPS showed a station about 15 miles ahead in a place called Dermot. Never heard of it before, but that's not unusual. Texas has more tiny towns than anyone can keep track of. The listing said 24-hour service, diesel available. That's all I needed to know. When I pulled off the highway, the first thing that struck me was how new everything looked. The station was one of those modern setups with LED canopy lights bright enough to land planes. 4 diesel pumps on one side, regular gas on the other. The convenience store had floor-to-ceiling windows and that clean white tile that gas station chains love to use. But something felt off right away. For a station this nice, this new, there wasn't a single other vehicle in sight. No cars at the pumps, no trucks in the back lot, not even an employee's vehicle parked around the side. The lights were all on, though, and I could see someone moving behind the register inside. I pulled up to the first diesel pump and killed the engine. The sudden silence hit hard after hours of engine noise. No cricket sounds, no distant traffic, just that electrical hum from the canopy lights. I climbed down from the cab, stretched my back, and walked around to start the fueling process. The card reader on the pump was wrapped in plastic with a handwritten sign that said, "See cashier for all diesel purchases." Great. Nothing I hate more than having to go inside and leave a deposit, especially this late at night. But I needed the fuel, so I headed for the store. The door chimed when I pushed it open. The guy behind the counter looked up from whatever he was reading and gave me a smile that was a little too wide, held a little too long. He was maybe 60, thin as a fence post, with gray hair slicked back with too much gel. His name tag said, "Gus, owner." "Evening, driver," Gus said, setting down his magazine. "Need some diesel, I'm guessing?" "Yes, sir," I said, pulling out my wallet. "Pump one. I'll probably need about 100 gallons. Gus nodded, still wearing that uncomfortable smile. "No problem at all. We'll get you taken care of. Just need to see your CDL and I'll get the pump turned on." That was odd. I'd been buying diesel for over 2 decades, and nobody had ever asked to see my commercial license at a fuel stop. I must have shown my confusion because Gus quickly added, "New regulations from the state. Been having problems with fuel thieves using stolen credit cards. This way we can track who's buying what." It sounded like complete nonsense, but I was tired and just wanted to get fueled up and back on the road. I handed over my license. Gus made a big show of writing down the information in a ledger book, taking his time with each letter and number. "Chester," he said, reading my name off the license. "Good solid name. Biblical, right? Where you headed tonight, Chester?" "San Antonio," I said, trying to keep the conversation short. Long haul. What are you carrying, if you don't mind me asking? Frozen beef. From Amarillo, I bet. They've got those big packing plants up there. Gus handed back my license, but kept talking. Your refrigeration unit running good? Those things eat up extra fuel when it's hot like this. It's running fine, I said, already backing toward the door. So pump 1 is good to go? Oh, absolutely. Take all you need. That smile again. Actually, hold on 1 second. Gus picked up a phone behind the counter, an old landline model, and dialed a short number. After a moment, he said, Otis? Yeah, we've got a customer at Pump 1. Diesel. Can you come up and check the filters real quick? A pause. I know, but better safe than sorry. Thanks. He hung up and looked back at me. My mechanic's going to take a quick look at the pump filters. We've been having some sediment problems. Don't want you getting bad fuel and breaking down out here. Wouldn't be good for business, you know. I appreciate the concern, I said, but I'm kind of in a hurry. Maybe I should just try the next station. Oh no need for that, Gus said quickly. Otis'll just be a minute. The next diesel station is 40 miles down the road, and they close at midnight. You'd be running on fumes before you got there. Besides, I'll knock 10 cents off per gallon for the inconvenience. The math made sense, even if the situation didn't. I nodded and headed back outside. Sure enough, a man in coveralls was already kneeling beside Pump 1 with a toolbox. Otis, I assumed. He was younger than Gus, maybe 40, built like someone who'd done manual labor his whole life. Thick arms, thick neck, permanent squint from years of sun damage. Be just a minute, Otis said without looking up. He had the access panel open on the pump and was shining a flashlight inside. Gus is real particular about fuel quality. I leaned against my truck and waited. Otis worked in silence, occasionally reaching into his toolbox for different tools. After about 5 minutes, he closed the panel and stood up. Should be good now, he said. Filters were clean. You're all set. He walked away without another word, heading around the back of the station. I watched him go, then turned my attention to the pump. The display showed it was ready, so I grabbed the nozzle and started filling up. The fuel gauge climbed slowly. 50 gallons, 75. I was watching the numbers when I noticed Gus had come outside. He was standing by the store entrance, just watching me, not doing anything else, just standing there with his hands in his pockets, watching me pump diesel. At 90 gallons, the pump suddenly stopped. The display showed an error message I'd never seen before. Maximum transaction reached. See attendant. I tried the trigger again. Nothing. I hung up the nozzle and walked over to Gus, who was still standing in the same spot. Pump shut off at 90 gallons, I said. Oh, that's the anti-theft limit, Gus explained. But don't worry, I can override it from inside. You said you needed 100, right? Actually, 90 is probably enough. Nonsense. 10 more gallons might be the difference between making it to your destination or not. Come on, I'll reset it for you. He turned and walked back into the store. I followed, mainly because I needed to pay anyway. While Gus fiddled with the register, I noticed a security monitor behind the counter showing multiple camera angles. One focused on Pump 1 where my truck sat. Another showed the back of the building. A third displayed what looked like the inside of a garage or workshop. There we go, Gus announced. Pumps reset, you can get your last 10 gallons. I paid for the 90 gallons, noting that he'd actually given me the discount he'd promised. As I signed the receipt, Gus said, You know, Otis mentioned your front driver's side tire looked a little low. Might want to check that before you get back on the highway. It was fine when I did my pre-trip. Highway heat does funny things to tire pressure. Just a suggestion. I took my receipt and headed back out. The pump had indeed reset, so I added the final 10 gallons. As I was replacing the fuel cap, I walked around to check that front tire Gus had mentioned. It looked perfectly normal to me. Proper pressure, no visible damage. That's when I noticed Otis's toolbox was still sitting beside the pump. The lid was partially open and I could see inside. Along with the expected wrenches and screwdrivers, there was something else. A small glass vial filled with clear liquid, and what looked like a syringe. I pretended not to notice, finished securing my fuel cap, and climbed back into the cab. As I started the engine, I saw Gus come back outside. He waved at me, that same too-wide smile on his face. I gave him a nod and pulled out of the station. The engine sounded normal as I merged back onto Highway 84. Temperature was good, oil pressure where it should be. But I kept thinking about that vial and syringe in Otis's toolbox. What the hell would a mechanic need those for? About 5 miles down the road, I noticed the first problem. The RPM gauge was fluctuating slightly, just a tiny wobble every few seconds. Nothing dramatic, but in 23 years of driving, I'd learned to pay attention to the small things. Then came a subtle loss of power. Not enough to stop me, but I had to press the accelerator a bit harder to maintain speed. The engine didn't sound quite right either. Hard to describe, but when you've listened to the same sounds for thousands of hours, you know when something's off. I reached for my phone to call June, let her know I might be running late if this turned into a real problem. That's when the engine gave its first serious cough. Just one, like it had tried to clear its throat. Then another. Then the whole truck shuddered. The check engine light blazed to life on the dashboard. Then the oil pressure warning. Then temperature. Within 30 seconds, my dashboard looked like a Christmas tree. I immediately started looking for a place to pull over, but this stretch of Highway 84 was nothing but narrow shoulders and deep ditches. The engine coughed again, harder this time. I felt the power drop significantly. The speedometer fell from 60 to 40, then 30. Black smoke started pouring from my exhaust stacks, visible in my mirrors even in the darkness. Finally, I spotted a ranch entrance about a quarter mile ahead. Just a gravel road with a cattle guard, but it would have to do. I managed to limp the truck off the highway and about 50 feet down the ranch road before the engine died completely. The silence was deafening. No engine noise, no refrigeration unit, just the tick-tick-tick of hot metal cooling. I tried the ignition. The starter turned over, but the engine wouldn't catch. Tried again. Same result. I grabbed my phone to call for roadside assistance, but there was no signal, not even one bar. That didn't make sense. I'd had decent coverage at the gas station just 5 miles back. That's when I saw the headlights in my side mirror. A vehicle had pulled off the highway and was coming down the ranch road toward me. As it got closer, I recognized the outline. It was a tow truck. Now, I'd been broken down on the side of the road exactly 3 times in my career. Every single time, it took at least an hour for a tow truck to show up, and that was after calling for one. This truck was here in less than 10 minutes, without me calling anyone. The tow truck pulled up beside me and stopped. In the glow of its headlights, I could read the lettering on the door. Gus's Garage, 24-hour service, Dermott, Texas. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Otis. He walked up to my window with that same neutral expression he'd had at the gas station. I kept my doors locked and cracked the window just an inch. "Engine trouble?" Otis asked, as if he didn't already know. "Yeah, started right after I left your station." "That's unfortunate. Gus sent me to check on you. He noticed on the cameras that you were driving erratically. Thought you might need help." "How did he see me? I'm 5 miles from the station." Otis smiled for the first time. It wasn't reassuring. "Gus has cameras all along this stretch. He likes to keep an eye on his customers, make sure they're safe." That was a lie. There were no cameras out here, no poles, no equipment boxes, nothing but fence posts and mesquite trees. But I kept that observation to myself. "I've already called my company," I lied. "They're sending someone." "From where?" "Nearest authorized diesel mechanic is in Abilene. That's 2 hours away, assuming they're even answering phones this time of night. Otis pulled out a cell phone, one of those expensive smartphones. I can call Gus, have him contact your company directly. He's got all the right connections. No need. They're on their way. Otis shrugged. Suit yourself, but that refrigeration unit of yours isn't running. How long before that beef starts to thaw? Your company going to be happy about that? He had a point. Without power, the refrigeration unit was dead. In this heat, even at night, I had maybe 4 hours before the temperature in the trailer started climbing toward the danger zone. If I lost the load, that would be my job for sure. What are you proposing? I asked. Simple. We tow you back to Gus's shop. I can probably get you running again in an hour or two. Might just be contaminated fuel. We've had problems with the supplier lately. Gus will give you a full refund, of course. And if it's not the fuel, then we figure out what it is and fix it. We're reasonable people, Chester. We don't want trouble any more than you do. Something about the way he said trouble made my skin crawl. It wasn't quite a threat, but it was definitely a warning. I looked at my phone again. Still no signal. I was alone out here with no way to call for help, and Otis knew it. How much for the tow? I asked. Free of charge. Like I said, if this is our fuel that caused the problem, it's our responsibility to make it right. I weighed my options. I could sit here and hope my phone found a signal eventually, but by then the load might be ruined. Or I could go with Otis, knowing full well that something wasn't right about this whole situation. Let me try to start it one more time, I said. I turned the key. The engine cranked but wouldn't fire. As I tried again, I noticed Otis had walked back to his tow truck. He was leaning against it, patient as a spider, waiting for me to reach the inevitable conclusion. On the third attempt, the engine actually caught for a second before dying again. That told me it wasn't a complete fuel system failure. Whatever was wrong, it was probably fixable. But not here. Not without tools. All right, I called out to Otis. You can tow me back, but I'm staying with the truck. Wouldn't have it any other way, Otis replied. He was already moving to position his truck. The process of hooking up took about 15 minutes. Otis worked efficiently, professionally. He'd clearly done this hundreds of times. As he attached the chains, I sent June a text message, even though it showed as undelivered. Broken down near Dermot, getting towed to local shop. Will update soon. The ride back to the station was surreal. Being in a dead truck, being pulled backward down a dark highway, watching the road disappear into the darkness. Otis drove carefully, slowly, like he was transporting fine china. When we arrived at the station, instead of stopping at the pumps, Otis continued around to the back. There was indeed a garage back there, a large metal building with 3 bay doors. One was already open, revealing a well-equipped shop inside. Gus was waiting for us, still wearing that unsettling smile. Chester, he called out as Otis lowered my truck. I'm so sorry about this. We'll get you fixed up right away. I need to stay with my truck, I said firmly, as I climbed down from the cab. Of course. Wouldn't want you to worry about your cargo. Otis, let's get her inside and see what we're dealing with. They pushed my truck into the garage using the tow truck. Once inside, Otis immediately went to work, popping the hood and connecting a diagnostic computer. Gus stood beside me, hands in his pockets, watching. You know, Gus said conversationally, we don't get many refrigerated trucks through here, mostly just dry goods and flatbeds. That's expensive cargo you're hauling. It's insured, I said. Oh, I'm sure it is. Still, insurance companies can be difficult about claims. They always want to prove negligence, find someone to blame. Better if nothing happens to it at all, don't you think? Otis called out from under the hood. Found the problem. Fuel system's full of contamination. Looks like water and some kind of sediment. It's all through the lines. That's impossible, I said. I just fueled up here an hour ago. Must have been in your tank already, Gus suggested. Sometimes these things build up over time, then suddenly cause problems. My truck was running perfectly until I got your diesel. Gus's smile faltered for just a second. Are you suggesting our fuel is contaminated? That's a serious accusation, Chester. Bad for business if word got out. Even if it's not true, rumors can destroy a small operation like ours. The threat was less subtle this time. I understood what he was really saying. Keep quiet. Let them fix the problem and get out of here. Or make trouble and face the consequences. How long to clean it out? I asked Otis. Couple hours at least. Gotta drain the tank, flush all the lines, replace the filters. Maybe check the injectors too. And the cost? Well, Gus said, normally that would run about $1,500. But since we can't definitively prove the contamination didn't come from our pumps, how about we call it $500? Cash discount, of course. $500 cash for a repair that would normally cost 3 times that. They wanted me to pay them to fix a problem they had caused. But what choice did I have? I couldn't prove they'd contaminated my fuel, and even if I could, who would I report it to out here? I don't carry that much cash, I said. There's an ATM inside the store, Gus offered helpfully. Or we could work out a payment plan. Maybe there's something in your truck worth trading. Those refrigeration units have valuable parts. Now we were getting to it. This wasn't just about $500. They wanted something from my truck, maybe from my cargo. The whole thing had been a setup from the moment I pulled into their station. I'll use the ATM, I said. Smart choice. Gus's smile returned to full brightness. Otis, get started on that flush. Chester and I will handle the paperwork. As I followed Gus back to the store, I took careful note of my surroundings. There was another building behind the garage, smaller, with no windows. A white van was parked beside it, the kind with no windows in the back. The license plate was covered with mud, obscuring the numbers. Inside the store, the ATM was in the back corner. As I withdrew the cash, I noticed Gus had positioned himself between me and the door. Not obviously blocking it, but definitely in the way. You know, he said, we occasionally have drivers who can't pay for repairs. We work something out, though. Always do. Otis is very creative when it comes to alternative payment methods. I handed him the $500 without comment. He counted it slowly, then tucked it into his shirt pocket. Let's go see how Otis is doing, he said. Back in the garage, Otis had my truck up on the lift and was underneath with a drain pan. Dark fluid was pouring out of the fuel tank, but even from a distance, I could see it wasn't normal diesel. There were clearly 2 distinct layers, one darker than the other. Definitely water contamination, Otis announced. Probably been in there for a while. You're lucky you made it as far as you did. Lucky. Right. I watched them work, noting how coordinated they were. Gus would hand Otis tools before he asked for them. They'd done this routine before, probably many times. An hour passed, then 2. My phone still showed no signal, though I noticed Gus using his own phone several times without problem. They must have had a cell blocker, something that could be turned on and off as needed. Around 3 a.m., Otis announced he was almost done. Just needed to test the engine to make sure everything was flowing properly. He lowered the truck and climbed into the cab. The engine turned over immediately and purred like it was brand new. Sounds good, Otis said, climbing back down. But I'd like to check one more thing in the back, just to make sure your refrigeration unit kicks back on properly. It's locked, I said quickly. Oh, I'm sure you've got the keys, Gus said. We're just being thorough. Wouldn't want you to get down the road and discover the repair work affected something else. The unit's on a separate system. Usually, yes, but sometimes these electrical problems can cross over. Just a quick look, Chester, then you can be on your way. They were both staring at me now, Otis still holding a large wrench, Gus with his hands in his pockets where I couldn't see them. The garage suddenly felt very small and isolated. I pulled out my keys, found the one for the trailer's padlock. I'll open it. We'll all go, Gus suggested. Many hands make light work. At the back of the trailer, I unlocked the padlock and swung open the heavy doors. Cold air rushed out, confirming the refrigeration unit was indeed working. The cargo was still frozen solid, beef boxes stacked to the ceiling. Otis climbed up into the trailer with a flashlight, making a show of checking the refrigeration unit's internal components. But I saw his eyes scanning the cargo labels, memorizing information. "Everything looks good," he announced after a few minutes. "You're all set, Chester." I locked the trailer back up while they watched. Then we all walked back to the front of the truck. My keys were in my hand, but Gus stepped slightly closer. "Before you go," he said, "I should mention that we keep detailed records of all our repairs. For tax purposes, you understand. Name, license number, truck information, cargo manifests when available. Just so everything's above board." "I didn't give you my cargo manifest?" "No, but Otis has a good eye for details. Beef from Amarillo Premium Packing heading to Delgado Distribution in San Antonio. Probably worth what, about 200,000 wholesale?" My blood went cold. He'd named my exact pickup and delivery points. "That's valuable information," Gus continued. "The kind that certain people might pay good money for. People who hijack trucks, for instance. Of course, we're not those kind of people. We're just simple mechanics trying to make a living. But if someone were to cause us trouble, say by reporting false contamination claims, well, that information might accidentally find its way to the wrong hands." "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" Gus looked genuinely offended. "Chester, we just fixed your truck for a third of what it should have cost. We got you back on the road with your cargo intact. I'm just explaining how the world works out here. We all look out for each other. You don't cause problems for us. We don't cause problems for you." Otis had moved to stand by the garage door control, ready to open it when I was ready to leave, or ready to close it if I wasn't. "I understand," I said. "Good man. Drive safe now. And Chester, maybe find a different route next time you're heading south. Lots of nice highways that don't go through Dermot." I climbed into my cab, started the engine, and waited as Otis raised the garage door. As I pulled out, I looked in my mirror one last time. Gus and Otis stood side by side, watching me leave. Not waving, not smiling anymore, just watching. 5 miles down the road, my phone suddenly showed full signal. All my text messages to June went through at once. I pulled over at the next town, a proper town with street lights and a 24-hour diner, and called my dispatcher. I told him I'd had engine trouble but got it fixed. Didn't mention the contamination, didn't mention Gus or Otis or Dermot. What was the point? No evidence, no witnesses, just my word against theirs. But I did reroute. Every trip after that, I took the long way around, adding 50 miles to avoid that stretch of Highway 84. Other drivers asked why. I told them construction, or traffic, or any excuse that came to mind. Because here's what I learned that night. There are patches of darkness out there on those lonely highways, places where the normal rules don't apply, places where people like Gus and Otis have carved out their own little kingdoms, feeding off travelers who have no choice but to stop. And the scariest part? They're still out there. That station is still operating. I checked online recently. 5 stars on Google Maps, dozens of positive reviews about helpful service and fair prices, all posted in the last 2 years, all from accounts with no other activity. Sometimes, late at night when I'm driving past Dermot 50 miles out of my way, I wonder how many other drivers weren't as lucky as me. How many broke down and never made their delivery? How many trucks disappeared somewhere between Gus's smile and Otis's wrench? But I keep driving, keep my tank full, and never, ever stop in Dermot, Texas. 3 weeks passed after the Dermot incident. I'd made 6 runs since then, all using alternate routes, all without problems. The truck was running fine. No signs of any lasting damage from whatever Otis and Gus had done. I'd almost convinced myself to let it go, chalk it up as a learning experience and move on. Then June showed me the credit card statement. We were sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning, coffee getting cold while she went through the monthly bills. She had that look on her face, the one that meant something wasn't adding up. "Chester, did you buy something in Dermot after that breakdown?" she asked, sliding the statement across to me. I looked at the highlighted line. 3 days after my encounter with Gus and Otis, there was a charge for $1,847.92 from G&O Automotive Services, Dermot, Texas. "I paid them $500 cash," I said, my stomach dropping. "They never ran my credit card." "Well, they charged it anyway. And look at this." June pointed to another charge 2 lines down. "Same day, $2,100 at something called High Plains Logistics, also in Dermot." "I've never heard of that company." June pulled out her phone and started searching. After a minute, she shook her head. "High Plains Logistics doesn't exist. No website, no business registration, nothing. It's a fake charge." We disputed both charges immediately, but the credit card company said we'd have to wait for an investigation. In the meantime, we were out almost $4,000, money we didn't have to spare. That afternoon, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called the gas station in Dermot. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Gus's Gas and Garage, this is Gus speaking. This is Chester, the trucker from 3 weeks ago. You contaminated my fuel and charged my credit card without authorization." There was a pause. Then that friendly tone I remembered too well. "Chester, good to hear from you. I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding. You paid for your repairs in cash, as I recall. We don't even keep credit card information on file." "Cut the act. I'm filing a police report." "Are you? That's interesting. And what will you tell them? That you got your truck repaired and now regret paying for it? We have all the paperwork right here. Signed work order, itemized parts list, even security footage of you authorizing the repairs." "I never signed anything." "Oh, but you did. When you used our ATM, you agreed to our terms of service. It's all perfectly legal. As for that other charge you're probably calling about, well, we've never heard of High Plains Logistics. Must be someone else who got your card information. These things happen, especially when you're using ATMs at random gas stations." The threat was clear. Dispute the charges, and more would appear. Make trouble, and my credit card information would be sold to whoever wanted it. "What do you want?" I asked. "Want? Nothing at all. We're square, as far as I'm concerned. You got your truck fixed, we got paid for our work. Fair's fair. But if you're thinking about causing problems, well, that would be unfortunate, for everyone. You can't just—" "Chester, let me give you some free advice. Cancel that credit card. Get a new one. Move on with your life. Because the alternative is much more complicated. We have friends in lots of places. The kind of friends who might be very interested in a truck full of expensive cargo running regular routes through isolated areas." He hung up before I could respond. June was watching me from across the kitchen. What did he say? "We need to cancel the credit card," I told her. "And I need to talk to my dispatcher about changing my routes permanently." But changing routes wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. My dispatcher, a guy named Harv who'd been with the company for 30 years, called me into his office the next day. "Chester, I've been looking at your fuel costs," he said, showing me a spreadsheet. "You're burning an extra $100 per run avoiding that stretch of 84. The company can't eat that cost forever." I explained about the breakdown. "You said you had engine trouble that got fixed. You didn't say anything about avoiding the area. Now I'm hearing from other drivers that you're warning them off that route too. What's really going on?" I wanted to tell him everything, but how could I? It sounded insane even to me. A gas station that contaminated fuel on purpose? Mechanics who threatened drivers? Credit card fraud tied to a repair shop?
Without proof, it was just paranoia. That station gave me bad fuel, I said finally. I don't trust them. Then file a complaint with the state, get them investigated, but I can't authorize permanent route changes based on a hunch. Starting next week, you're back on the regular run through 84. I tried arguing, but Harv's mind was made up. The company had contracts to fulfill, schedules to keep. One driver's paranoia couldn't derail the whole operation. That night, I called my buddy Marcus, another driver who worked for a different company. We'd known each other for 15 years, started driving around the same time. If anyone would understand, it would be him. "You ever hear of a place called Dermot?" I asked after we'd caught up on family news. "Little spot on 84? Yeah, I know it, or knew it. Stopped there once about 6 months ago. Why?" "What happened when you stopped?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Funny you should ask. Had the strangest experience there. Pulled in for diesel around 10 at night. Nobody else around, but this old guy running the place was super friendly. Too friendly, you know. Kept asking about my cargo, where I was headed, all that. Then my truck wouldn't start after I fueled up. Same thing happened to me." "No kidding? They tow you back to their shop?" "Yeah. Charged me $500 cash, plus hit my credit card for $4,000 and fake charges later." Jesus, they only got me for $300 cash. But here's the weird part. About a month later, the load I was carrying when I stopped there, it got hijacked. Different state, different route, but same cargo I'd been hauling through Dermot. Like someone knew exactly what I was carrying and when I'd be vulnerable. "Did you report it?" "To who?" "The insurance company investigated, but the hijackers were never caught. Truck was found abandoned, cargo gone, and I couldn't prove the connection to Dermot. Just looked like bad luck." We talked for another hour, comparing notes. Marcus had noticed the same things I had. The too friendly owner, the mechanic who appeared immediately when there was trouble, the way they'd known things about his route they shouldn't have known. "There's more of us," Marcus said before we hung up. "I've heard stories from other drivers. Different towns, same setup. These little stations in the middle of nowhere that know too much, charge too much, and somehow never get caught. What do we do about it?" "We survive it. We warn each other when we can, and we hope we're never desperate enough to stop at one of those places again." But I didn't have a choice. The following Monday, I was assigned a load of electronics from Fort Worth to Houston. The route took me straight through Highway 84, right past Dermot. I thought about calling in sick, but I needed the job. June and I had bills to pay, especially after the credit card fraud. I made sure to fuel up completely in Fort Worth, checked my tires twice, tested every system on the truck. If I could make it through Dermot without stopping, I'd be fine. The drive started normally enough. Good weather, light traffic, no mechanical issues. I hit Highway 84 just as the sun was setting, painting the Texas plains in shades of orange and red. The tank was 3/4 full, more than enough to make it past Dermot and on to the next legitimate stop. But 50 miles out from Dermot, things started going wrong. First, the air conditioning died. Just stopped blowing cold, then stopped blowing at all. In August, in Texas, that's not just uncomfortable. It's dangerous. The cab temperature climbed quickly, even with the windows down. Then the radio started acting up. Static on every station, even the ones that usually came in clear. The CB was worse, just white noise no matter what channel I tried. 20 miles from Dermot, the temperature gauge started climbing. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily upward. I pulled over to check the coolant level. It was fine. No leaks, no visible problems. But the gauge kept rising. I had two choices: push through and risk destroying the engine, or stop in Dermot for help. I kept driving. 10 miles from Dermot, the check engine light came on. Then the oil pressure warning. The truck started losing power, same as last time. But I was expecting it now. I'd been watching for it. I grabbed my phone and started recording video, narrating what was happening. The dashboard warnings, the loss of power, the mile markers showing my location. Evidence.
in case I needed it later. 5 miles from Dermot, I saw the lights of the gas station in the distance. The truck was barely managing 30 miles per hour. Black smoke poured from the exhaust. Every instinct told me to pull over, to stop before I destroyed the engine completely. I kept going. As I passed the exit for Dermot, I saw them. Gus and Otis standing by the road next to their tow truck, watching me struggle past. They didn't wave, didn't try to flag me down. They just watched, knowing I couldn't make it much farther. 2 miles past Dermot, the engine finally died. I coasted to a stop on the shoulder, still recording everything on my phone. The silence was overwhelming. No traffic, no insects, just the ticking of hot metal and my own breathing. I tried to restart the engine. Nothing. Tried again. The starter barely turned over. The battery was dying too, which made no sense. It was nearly new, installed just a month ago. That's when I saw the headlights in my mirror. The tow truck from Dermot, approaching slowly, taking its time. They knew I couldn't go anywhere. But I had one advantage this time. I'd sent the video to June while I was driving, along with my exact location. She was already on the phone with the state police, reporting a breakdown and requesting immediate assistance. The tow truck pulled up behind me. Gus got out of the passenger side, that familiar smile already in place. Otis stayed behind the wheel. "Chester!" Gus called out as he approached. "Having trouble again? What are the odds?" I stayed in my cab, doors locked, window cracked just enough to talk. "State police are on their way." "Are they? That's good. Safety first, but they're probably 40 minutes out. Your engine sounds pretty bad. Might not be fixable if you let it sit too long. Metal warps when it overheats, you know." "I'll wait." Sure. But while we're waiting, maybe we should talk about what happens next. See, you've been saying unfriendly things about our business. Marcus, for instance. He mentioned you two had quite the conversation." My blood went cold. How did he know about Marcus? "Oh, we keep tabs on our special customers," Gus continued. "The ones who might cause trouble. It's a small community, the trucking world. People talk, and sometimes those talks have consequences." "Is that a threat?" "Threat? No, just an observation. Trucks break down all the time. Cargo goes missing. Drivers have accidents. It's a dangerous job. That's why it's so important to have friends. People looking out for you." A second vehicle pulled off the highway. Not the police, but another 18-wheeler. It stopped in front of my truck, and the driver got out. A woman, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a company shirt I recognized. Pemberton Freight, one of the bigger operations out of Dallas. "This driver bothering you?" she asked me, completely ignoring Gus. "He's from the shop in Dermot," I said. "My truck broke down." She looked at Gus, then at the tow truck, then back at me. "I heard about Dermot on the CB. You need a witness?" "I'd appreciate it." She pulled out her phone and started recording. Gus's smile finally disappeared completely. "No need for all this," he said, backing toward the tow truck. "We were just offering assistance, but if you've got help coming, we'll be on our way." They left without another word, driving back toward Dermot. The woman, who introduced herself as Patricia, stayed with me until the state police arrived. Then she stayed while we waited for a legitimate tow truck from Snyder. The mechanic who eventually looked at my truck found something interesting. A small device attached to the engine control module, hidden behind a bundle of wires. It was designed to interfere with the engine's performance, could be activated remotely, probably by a cell phone signal. "This is sophisticated stuff," the mechanic said, holding the device in a plastic bag. "Expensive, too. Someone really wanted your truck to break down." I gave the device to the state police, along with my videos and a full statement about both encounters with Gus and Otis. They said they'd investigate, but warned me that proving anything would be difficult. The device had no serial numbers, no identifying marks. Could have come from anywhere. Been installed by anyone. A week later, I heard from Marcus. His truck had broken down on a completely different route, hundreds of miles from Dermot. When the mechanic checked, they found the same type of device on his engine. "They're not just operating in Dermot," he told me. "They've got a network. Multiple stations, multiple crews, all running the same scam." We started an informal warning system among drivers we trusted. Text messages about suspicious stations, mechanics who asked too many questions, places where cell phones mysteriously didn't work. The list grew longer every month. But Gus was right about one thing. It's a dangerous job. 3 months after my second encounter with Dermot, my truck was broken into while I was sleeping at a rest stop. Nothing stolen, but they left something behind. A photo of June, taken from a distance while she was grocery shopping. On the back, someone had written, "Drive safe." I changed companies after that, took a pay cut to work for an outfit that only did local deliveries, home every night. June didn't argue. She'd seen the photo. The station in Dermot is still there, last I heard. Still has 5 stars on Google Maps. Still has Gus and Otis running their operation. The state police investigation went nowhere. No evidence of wrongdoing, they said. Just a series of unfortunate coincidences. But I know better. And so do the other drivers who've been caught in their web. We don't talk about it much, not openly. But sometimes, at truck stops or diners, you'll hear someone mention a place to avoid, a station that gives them bad feelings. And if you listen carefully, take note of the warnings, you might just make it through your run without becoming another victim of the highway predators. Because they're out there, waiting in those dark corners of Texas where the cell towers don't reach and the police don't patrol. They're patient, prepared, and they know exactly how vulnerable a driver can be when their truck suddenly stops running in the middle of nowhere. The only defense is knowledge. Know your routes, know your truck, and know when something feels wrong, because by the time you're sitting in Gus's garage with Otis holding a wrench, it's already too late. I still drive, but only during daylight now. Only on routes I know well, and I never, ever stop for fuel at stations I don't recognize. The extra miles, the extra cost, it's all worth it to avoid ending up back in a place like Dermot. June says I'm paranoid. Maybe I am, but paranoia is just another word for learning from experience. And my experience taught me that some of the most dangerous people on the highway aren't the drunk drivers or the speeders. They're the ones who smile while they're sabotaging your truck, who offer help while they're stealing your credit card information, who know exactly how to make a breakdown look like bad luck instead of what it really is, a carefully orchestrated trap. So if you're ever driving through Texas late at night and you see a too friendly gas station in a town you've never heard of, keep driving. Run on fumes if you have to. Sleep on the shoulder if you must. But don't stop. Don't give them the chance to get their hooks in you. Because once they do, you'll never really be free of them. They'll always be there, in the back of your mind. Every time you see a gas station sign glowing in the darkness. Every time your engine makes an unexpected noise. Every time a stranger offers to help. That's the real horror of places like Dermot. It's not just what they do to your truck or your wallet. It's what they do to your peace of mind. They steal that too, and unlike credit card charges, you can't dispute it. You can't get it back. You just have to live with it, mile after mile, always watching your mirrors for the tow truck that might be following you, waiting for you to break down again. 6 months had passed since I'd switched to local deliveries. The pay was less, but June slept better at night, and so did I. No more overnight runs, no more isolated highways, no more stations in the middle of nowhere. I'd even started to believe that maybe I'd left all that trouble behind. Then Otis showed up at my house. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garage, changing the oil on June's car, when I heard footsteps on the driveway. I looked up, expecting to see our neighbor, but there he was. Same coveralls, same thick build, same dead expression. Just standing there at the end of my driveway, like he'd been invited. "Hello, Chester,"
he said, casual as could be. Nice place you got here. I stood up slowly, keeping the wrench in my hand. You need to leave. Now. Public sidewalk, Otis said, taking a step back but not leaving. Just happened to be in the neighborhood. San Antonio's not that far from Dermot when you think about it. What do you want? Gus wanted me to deliver a message, in person, to make sure you got it. He pulled out a manila envelope from inside his coveralls. Things have gotten complicated since your last visit. State police sniffing around, asking questions. Bad for business. Good. Not really. See, when business gets bad, we have to make up for losses elsewhere, and you still owe us. I don't owe you anything. There's the repair work, the towing, the lost business from your false accusations. Adds up to about $50,000, the way Gus figures it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're insane. Maybe. But insane people do insane things when they're desperate. He set the envelope on the ground between us. Take a look. Then we'll talk. He walked back to a white van parked across the street, got in, and drove away. I waited until he was gone before picking up the envelope. Inside were photos, dozens of them. June at the grocery store, June at her book club, June walking into the school where she worked as a secretary. Our daughter visiting from college, standing outside her dorm. Our son at his construction job in Austin, all taken from a distance, all recent. The last item was a handwritten note. 50,000 or these photos become more than just pictures. You have 1 week. Instructions to follow. I went inside and called the police immediately. They sent an officer over, took my statement, looked at the photos. But without proof that Otis had left them, without any direct threats of violence, there wasn't much they could do. File a restraining order, the officer suggested. Document everything. If they contact you again, call us immediately. That night, I showed June the photos. She went pale, then angry, then scared. We talked about our options. Moving wasn't feasible. We couldn't afford it. Going to the FBI seemed extreme for what was essentially extortion from a gas station. Paying them was out of the question. We didn't have $50,000. What if we fight back? June asked. Gather evidence, build a case. These aren't amateurs, I said. They've been doing this for years. They know how to avoid leaving evidence. Then we make them create evidence. The next day, instructions arrived via text from an unknown number. I was to deliver the money to a specific location, an abandoned truck stop on Highway 90, at midnight on Saturday. Come alone. No police. No weapons. June and I spent the next 3 days planning. We borrowed money from her brother, telling him it was for medical bills. Not $50,000, but $20,000 in cash. Enough to make it look legitimate. I bought 3 hidden cameras online, the kind that looked like buttons or pens. June reached out to Patricia, the female trucker who'd helped me before, and she agreed to be backup, waiting a mile away with her phone ready to call police. Saturday came too quickly. I drove my personal truck, not the company vehicle, and arrived at the abandoned truck stop at 11:45. The place had been closed for years, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement, windows boarded up. A perfect place for bad things to happen. Gus was already there, leaning against that same white van. No sign of Otis, but I knew he was around somewhere. He always was. Chester, Gus called out as I parked. Right on time. Very professional. I got out, keeping my distance. The camera in my shirt button was recording everything. The one in my pen was in my pocket as backup. I don't have $50,000, I said. No? That's disappointing. I have 20. It's all I could get. Gus tilted his head, considering. 20,000. That's not even half. It's what I have. Take it or leave it. Oh, I'll take it. But that doesn't settle our account. You'll need to make up the difference. How? you're going to go back to long-haul driving, and once a month, you're going to have a breakdown near Dermot. We'll fix your truck, charge your company insurance for repairs that aren't needed. You'll sign off on everything, make it all legitimate. Insurance fraud. Such an ugly term. I prefer creative accounting. Gus smiled that familiar smile. Of course, if you'd rather not cooperate, those photos of your family could find their way to some very unpleasant people. Human trafficking is a terrible problem along the border, I hear. That was the threat I'd been waiting for. Direct, recorded, undeniable. The money's in my truck, I said. Let me get it. I walked back to my vehicle, reached into the cab and pulled out, not the money, but my phone. I'd already dialed 911, just had to hit send. As I did, I shouted, "They're threatening my family! Abandoned truck stop on Highway 90!" Gus's expression changed instantly. He sprinted for the van, yanking open the door. That's when Otis appeared from behind the abandoned building, running for the passenger side. But Patricia had been watching. She'd moved closer than planned, and when she saw them running, she pulled her 18-wheeler across the exit, blocking them in. The van's engine roared to life. Gus tried to drive around Patricia's truck, but there wasn't enough room. He backed up, tried another angle, but Patricia adjusted, keeping them trapped. Police sirens were already audible in the distance. Gus made one last desperate attempt, gunning the van toward a gap between Patricia's trailer and a concrete barrier. He almost made it, but the van clipped the barrier, spinning sideways and stalling. By the time the police arrived, Gus and Otis were standing beside their wrecked van, hands visible, playing innocent. But I had the recordings. Patricia had video of them trying to flee. And when the police searched the van, they found something interesting. 3 cell phone jammers, military grade. A case full of those engine control devices, the same kind they'd put on my truck. And a laptop with detailed information about dozens of truckers, including routes, cargo manifests, and personal information about their families. The arrests made the news. Sophisticated extortion ring targeting truckers busted in Texas. The investigation that followed uncovered the full scope of their operation. 7 gas stations across rural Texas, all running the same scam. Contaminated fuel, sabotaged trucks, extortion, insurance fraud. They'd been doing it for over a decade. Otis flipped first, trying to cut a deal. He revealed that Gus wasn't just running a scam. He was connected to a larger criminal organization that specialized in cargo theft. The information truckers provided under duress was sold to hijacking crews. Marcus had been right. His load hadn't been randomly targeted. The trial took 18 months. I testified, along with 14 other drivers who came forward once Gus and Otis were in custody. Some had been paying them for years, too scared to speak up. Others had lost their jobs after mysterious breakdowns and cargo thefts. Gus got 25 years federal time for racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy. Otis got 15 for his cooperation. The gas station in Dermot was seized by the government, later sold at auction. Someone turned it into a fruit stand. But the story doesn't end with their convictions. 3 months after the trial, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was shaking. "Chester, you need to be careful. I just got a visit from someone asking about Dermot. Said he was Gus's nephew, wanted to know what I'd told the cops." "What did you say?" "Nothing. Told him to leave or I'd call the police. But Chester, he knew things. About my roots, my new job, my kids' schools. The network, it's bigger than just Gus and Otis. I'd suspected as much." During the trial, prosecutors had mentioned unindicted co-conspirators several times. People who'd helped the operation but couldn't be directly linked to crimes. The investigation had cut off the head of the snake, but the body was still out there. June wanted us to move, leave Texas entirely. But running felt like letting them win. Plus, where would we go? If they had connections in 7 Texas towns, who's to say they didn't have them in Oklahoma or New Mexico too? Instead,
We got security cameras installed at the house. I started carrying a legal firearm. June took self-defense classes. We varied our routines, never taking the same route twice. Maybe it was overkill, but after everything that had happened, overkill felt appropriate. A year passed without incident. I stayed with the local delivery job, kept my head down, didn't talk to media about the trial. Some of the other drivers who'd testified weren't as careful. 2 had their trucks vandalized. 1 had his identity stolen, bank accounts drained. The authorities said there was no proof it was connected to the Dermott case, but we all knew better. Then, last month, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was making a delivery to a warehouse on the east side of San Antonio when I noticed a new gas station being built across the street. The sign wasn't up yet, but the design was familiar. Too familiar. The same layout as the station in Dermott, the same style pumps, the same positioning of the garage in the back. I asked around, tried to find out who was building it. The permits were in the name of a company called Desert Sun Fuel Services. No online presence, no public records beyond the basic registration. The company was owned by another company, which was owned by another company. A shell game designed to hide the real owners. But I knew. The way you know a snake is dangerous, even if you've never seen that exact species before. This was them. Gus's network, rebuilding, adapting, getting ready to start the whole thing over again. I reported it to the FBI agent who'd handled the original case. He said he'd look into it, but without concrete evidence of criminal activity, there wasn't much they could do. A similar gas station design wasn't illegal. Shell companies weren't illegal. Being paranoid wasn't illegal either, he reminded me. The station opened 2 weeks ago. Desert Sun Fuel Stop, the sign says. Open 24 hours. Diesel available. Mechanical services on site. I drove by once, just to see. There was a man behind the counter, young, maybe 30, with the same thin build as Gus, the same slicked back hair. When he saw me watching from my truck, he smiled and waved. That same too wide smile. I haven't been back. Patricia called me yesterday. She's been keeping tabs on trucker forums online, watching for patterns. 3 drivers have reported breakdowns near that new station in the past 2 weeks. All of them mentioned helpful staff, reasonable prices, quick repairs. 5-star reviews are already appearing on Google Maps. It's starting again, she said. Different name, same game. She's right. But this time we're watching. We know the signs. We have a network too now, drivers who've been through it, who know what to look for. We share information, warn each other, document everything. Because that's the thing about predators. They don't stop when one of them gets caught. They learn, adapt, find new hunting grounds. The only defense is vigilance and community, looking out for each other on those long, dark highways. I still drive local only, still go home to June every night, still check my mirrors more than I should. The fear Gus and Otis put in me hasn't gone away. It's just evolved into something more useful. Caution, awareness, a healthy respect for the dangers that lurk in plain sight. New drivers ask me sometimes why I'm so paranoid about gas stations, why I only fuel up at certain places, why I tell them to keep driving even if their tank is empty. I tell them about Dermott, about Gus and Otis, about the photos of my family and the devices on the engines. Some believe me. Some think I'm just another old driver with too many stories. But the smart ones, they listen. They remember. And maybe, just maybe, when they see that too friendly smile at a too empty station in the middle of nowhere, they'll keep driving. That's all we can do, really. Keep driving, keep watching, keep warning each other. Because the Gusses and Otises of the world aren't going away. They're out there right now, somewhere on a dark stretch of highway, waiting for the next tired driver to pull in for fuel, waiting to contaminate more than just their tank. The new station on the east side of San Antonio is thriving, according to online reviews. Helpful staff, fair prices, quick service, all the things drivers want to hear. But I know better. I've seen behind that smile, felt the weight of that wrench, heard the subtle threats behind the friendly words. So I keep my distance. I warn who I can. And I wait. Because eventually, they'll make a mistake. They'll target the wrong driver, leave the wrong evidence, push too hard on someone who pushes back. And when that happens, when the mask slips again, we'll be ready. Until then, I drive my local routes. I go home to June. I check the locks twice before bed. And I try not to think about how many drivers are out there right now, pulling into stations they shouldn't trust, talking to mechanics who know too much, signing receipts that will cost them more than money. But mostly, I try not to think about the fact that Gus only got 25 years. With good behavior, he could be out in 15. Otis even sooner. And when they get out, they'll have friends waiting. People who remember the drivers who testified. People who know where we live, where we work, where our families shop for groceries. The thought keeps me awake sometimes, listening to June breathe beside me, wondering if that noise outside is just the wind or something more deliberate. But I can't live in fear forever. None of us can. We just have to be ready, be smart, and most importantly, be united. Because that's what they don't understand, these predators. They think truckers are isolated, vulnerable, easy targets. And maybe we were once, but not anymore. Now we have each other's backs. Now we share information. Now we know what to look for. And if they come for any of us again, they'll find we're not the easy prey we used to be. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. June's phone, not mine. She answered groggily, then sat bolt upright, her face draining of color. She handed me the phone without a word. Chester. The voice was familiar but wrong. Weak, scared. It was Marcus. Marcus? What's wrong? I'm at Brackenridge Hospital in Austin. I need you to come. Now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. What happened? Not on the phone. Just come. And Chester? Bring that gun you carry. The line went dead. June was already getting dressed, but I stopped her. You're staying here, I said. Lock everything. Don't answer the door for anyone. Chester, please, just trust me. She nodded, fear replacing argument in her eyes. I grabbed my jacket, my legally concealed Glock, and headed for Austin. The drive usually took 90 minutes. I made it in 70, breaking every speed limit. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Marcus had been careful since the Dermot trial. If something had happened to him, it wasn't random. I found him in room 314, his left arm in a cast, bruises covering half his face. A nurse was adjusting his IV when I walked in. Give us a minute, Marcus said to her. She looked at me suspiciously but left. Jesus, Marcus, who did this? They said they were friends of Gus, 3 of them. Young guys, 20s maybe. They were waiting at my last delivery stop and warehouse outside Austin. What did they want? Information. About you, specifically. Where you live now, your new routes, your schedule. He shifted painfully in the bed. I didn't tell them anything, Chester. Not a damn thing. You should have. Your life is worth more than... No. His voice was firm despite the pain. They weren't going to let me go either way. I could see it in their eyes. The only reason I'm alive is because a security guard happened to come by. They scattered, but not before one of them said something. What? Gus sends his regards from Huntsville. Chester, he's running things from inside prison. The whole network is still active. I sank into the visitor's chair. We'd known the organization was bigger than just Gus and Otis. But if Gus was still giving orders from federal prison, we were dealing with something far more sophisticated than a couple of crooked mechanics. There's more, Marcus continued. The security guard got a partial plate on their van. White van, just like the one Otis used to drive. State police ran it, came back to that new company. Desert Sun Fuel Services. The new gas station. I'd been right. "We need to go to the FBI," I said. "With what? My word against theirs? The van's probably already been destroyed, and I didn't get a good look at any of their faces. Just young, white Texas boys. Could be anyone." He was right. Without solid evidence, it was just another assault case. The connection to Gus would be dismissed as paranoia. "What do we do?" I asked. "We get smarter. We organize. Patricia's already working on it. She's reaching out to every driver who testified, setting up a communication network, encrypted messaging app, coded warnings. If they want a war, we'll give them one." Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia's network grew. 17 drivers who'd had run-ins with the Dermot operation, plus another 30 who'd experienced similar scams at other stations. We shared intelligence, mapped suspicious locations, created a database of warning signs. That's when we noticed the pattern. 5 new stations had opened across Texas in the past year, all with different names but identical layouts. Desert Sun in San Antonio, Lone Star Fuel in Abilene, Prairie Rose Diesel near Waco, Highway Haven outside Corpus Christi, Red River Services up near Wichita Falls. Each station had glowing online reviews, all posted within days of opening. Each offered 24-hour service, mechanical repairs, and diesel fuel. Each was staffed by people who matched the same profile: middle-aged men who smiled too much and young mechanics who appeared too quickly when trucks broke down. We couldn't prove they were connected, but we didn't need to. The pattern was clear. Gus's network hadn't just survived his imprisonment, it had expanded. Then Patricia discovered something that changed everything. She'd been digging through corporate records, following the paper trail of shell companies that owned Desert Sun Fuel Services. 6 layers deep, she found a name that made both of us curse out loud: June Sanderson. My wife's name. "It's got to be coincidence," Patricia said, but we both knew it wasn't. I confronted June that night, showing her the corporate documents. She stared at them in confusion. "I've never heard of any of these companies," she said. "How is my name on this?" That's when we realized the true depth of what we were dealing with. They'd stolen June's identity, used her information to create one of their shell companies. If the authorities investigated, the trail would lead back to us. We wouldn't just look paranoid, we'd look complicit. "We have to leave," June said. "Tonight. Pack what we can and disappear." "No, that's what they want. To run us off, make us so scared we can't fight back." Then what do? We give them exactly what they don't expect. The next morning I did something that probably seemed insane. I drove to the Desert Sun gas station in San Antonio, pulled my truck right up to the diesel pump and walked inside. The man behind the counter was the same young guy I'd seen before. The family resemblance to Gus was even more obvious up close. His name tag said Gus Jr. "Morning," he said with that familiar smile. "Diesel?" "No, I'm here to deliver a message." His smile faltered slightly. "I'm sorry." "Tell your uncle that Chester says hello. Tell him I know about the 5 stations. Tell him I know about the shell companies, the identity theft, all of it." "I don't know what you're—" "And tell him this. I have copies of everything. Documents, photos, recordings. It's all in a safety deposit box, with instructions to release it to the FBI and the media if anything happens to me or my family." Gus Jr. had dropped all pretense of friendliness now. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Anything else?" he asked. "Yeah, your uncle thinks he won the first round. But the game's not over, and this time we're not playing defense." I walked out without another word, got in my truck, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw Gus Jr. already on his phone. The response came faster than expected. That night, our home security cameras captured a van slowly driving past our house 3 times. June's car had a flat tire the next morning, a neat puncture in the sidewall. My company got an anonymous tip that I was stealing cargo. triggering an investigation that found nothing but cost me 2 weeks of work. They were testing us, pushing boundaries, seeing how we'd react. We pushed back. Patricia organized a social media campaign. Every driver in our network started leaving honest reviews of the 5 suspicious stations. Not accusations, just observations. Station was empty, despite claiming to be busy. Mechanic appeared immediately when I had trouble. Prices seemed too good to be true. Within a week, the 5-star ratings were diluted with enough honest feedback that the stations dropped to 3 stars. Not enough to shut them down, but enough to make drivers think twice. Marcus, recovered from his beating, started a YouTube channel. Highway Warnings, he called it. He never mentioned Dermot directly, never named Gus or Otis, but he told story after story about suspicious breakdowns, contaminated fuel, and mechanics who knew too much. Each video ended with the same message: trust your gut. If something feels wrong, keep driving. The videos went viral in the trucking community. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments from drivers sharing their own experiences. The network was growing beyond anything we'd imagined. That's when things escalated. Patricia's truck was torched while she slept in a motel outside Dallas. She escaped unharmed, but the message was clear. Marcus found a GPS tracker on his personal vehicle. I received photos of June at work, just like before, but now with crosshairs drawn over her face. We met at a truck stop in Temple, halfway between our various locations. Patricia, Marcus, myself, and 5 other drivers who'd become core members of our resistance network. "They're getting desperate," Patricia said. "Good. Desperate people make mistakes." "Or they do desperate things," Marcus countered. "Someone's going to get killed if this continues." "Someone already has," said a driver named Roberto. "You hear about Tom Paulson? Found dead in his truck last month near Laredo. Heart attack, they said. But Tom was 35 and healthy as a horse." We all knew Tom, or knew of him. He'd been vocal about the Dermot trial, had started warning other drivers long before we organized. "We need to take this to the next level," I said. "Legal channels aren't working. Media isn't enough. We need to hit them where it hurts." "Their wallets," Patricia said, understanding immediately. We spent the next 3 hours planning. If they wanted to run a criminal network disguised as legitimate businesses, we'd treat them like legitimate businesses. That meant competition. Over the next month, we coordinated with independent truck stops along the same routes as the 5 suspicious stations. We negotiated group discounts for drivers, organized fuel cooperatives, created an app that showed real-time prices and safety ratings for every station in Texas. The suspicious stations started seeing their traffic drop. Truckers would drive extra miles to avoid them, even when they had the lowest prices. Word of mouth in the trucking community is powerful, and we made sure the word was spread far and wide. Then came the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. A young mechanic from the Prairie Rose diesel station near Waco contacted Patricia through the YouTube channel. Said his name was Kyle, that he'd been hired 6 months ago, and that he wanted out but was scared. Patricia and I met him at a Denny's off I-35. He was maybe 22, nervous as a cat, constantly checking the parking lot. "I didn't know what I was getting into," he said. "They told me it was just creative billing, padding insurance claims. But it's so much worse." "We know," I said. "The question is, will you help us stop it?" "I can't testify. They made that clear when they hired me. Anyone who talks has accidents." "We don't need testimony. We need evidence." Kyle pulled out a flash drive. "Everything's on here. Emails, financial records, instructions on how to contaminate fuel without leaving traces, lists of drivers they're targeting." My hand shook as I took the drive. This was it. Actual evidence. "There's something else," Kyle said. "Something big is being planned."
I don't know details, but I heard them talking about a final solution for the Chester problem. My blood ran cold. When? Soon. Maybe this week. That's why I'm coming to you now. I can't be part of murder. We gave Kyle $5,000 from our emergency fund and told him to disappear. He left that night for Mexico, as far as I know. Never heard from him again. The flash drive was everything Kyle promised, and more. Emails between Gus Jr. and his father in prison, using coded language but clear enough in intent. Financial records showing money laundering through the shell companies, and most damning, a list of 47 drivers marked for intervention, with my name at the top. We made copies of everything and sent them to the FBI, the Texas Rangers, the Department of Transportation, and 3 investigative journalists. Then we waited. The response was swift. Federal agents raided all 5 stations simultaneously at dawn, 3 days later. Gus Jr. was arrested along with 13 others. The investigation uncovered connections to a Mexican cartel that had been using the stations as waypoints for drug smuggling. But the most satisfying arrest came a week later. Gus himself, pulled from his cell in Huntsville and charged with running a criminal enterprise from prison. They added another 40 years to his sentence. He'll die behind bars. Otis tried to cut another deal, offering information about other similar operations across the Southwest. Last I heard, he was in witness protection somewhere in Minnesota. Good. Let him freeze. The 5 stations were seized and shuttered. The shell companies dissolved. June's name was cleared from all fraudulent documents. We thought it was over. We were wrong. 2 months after the arrests, I was making a delivery in South San Antonio when I noticed a familiar figure at a food truck. The woman from the very beginning, the one who'd approached me at that first station years ago when this all started. The one who'd stood in the fog and never blinked. She was watching me, standing perfectly still despite the lunch crowd moving around her. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not the too wide smile of Gus, but something worse. Something that said this wasn't over. I blinked, and she was gone. Vanished into the crowd like she'd never been there at all. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've seen her 4 more times. Always at a distance, always watching, always disappearing when I try to approach or point her out to someone else. Patricia thinks I'm seeing things, that the stress finally got to me. Marcus believes me but says there's nothing we can do about ghosts. June wants me to retire, leave trucking altogether. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm jumping at shadows now, seeing threats where there are none. But I know what I saw that night in the fog on Highway 36. And I know she's connected to all of this somehow. The first warning I ignored. The stations are closed, but new ones open every month. Different names, different faces, but I recognize the pattern. The too friendly smiles, the convenient breakdowns, the mechanics who appear too quickly. The network didn't die with Gus's operation. It just evolved, became more careful. We keep fighting. Our driver's network has grown to over 300 members across Texas and beyond. We share information, watch each other's backs, and most importantly, we remember. We remember what happened in Dermot, what Gus and Otis did, how many drivers suffered before we stopped them. But late at night, when I'm driving past those closed stations, I sometimes wonder if we really won, or if we just pushed the problem deeper into the shadows, where it's harder to see but just as dangerous. The woman in the fog is still out there. I know it, waiting, watching, planning something I can't quite figure out. Maybe she was the real boss all along, and Gus was just a front. Maybe she's gathering the scattered pieces of the network, rebuilding it stronger than before. Or maybe I'm just a paranoid old trucker who's seen too much and can't let go. Either way, I keep driving. Local routes only, home every night to June. We installed more cameras, better locks, a security system that would make a bank proud. We vary our routines, stay alert, trust no one we don't know.
because that's the real lesson of Dermot. Evil doesn't announce itself with horns and pitchforks. It smiles and offers to help. It contaminates what you need to survive, then charges you to fix the problem it created. It threatens what you love most and makes you pay for the privilege of keeping it safe. The woman hasn't approached me directly. Maybe she never will. Maybe she's content to just watch, to remind me that some victories are temporary and some enemies never really go away. But I'm ready if she does. We all are. The network of drivers who survived Dermot and places like it. We're not victims anymore. We're vigilant. We're connected. And we're not going anywhere. So if you're out there on the dark highways of Texas and you see a station that feels wrong, trust that feeling. If a mechanic appears too quickly or a smile seems too wide, keep driving. And if you see a woman standing in the fog who doesn't blink, don't stop. Don't even slow down. Because some traps are patient. They'll wait years for the right moment, the perfect victim, the one who lets their guard down. But we won't be those victims, not anymore. The fuel contamination in Dermot was just the beginning. The real contamination was fear, suspicion, the knowledge that danger can wear a friendly face. That's harder to flush out, harder to fix, maybe impossible. But we try. Every day, every mile, every time we warn another driver about a suspicious station. We try to clean the contamination from our industry, our highways, our lives. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all we can do. Drive safe. Watch out for each other, and never, ever stop at a station that feels wrong. Because Gus is in prison, Otis is in hiding. But the woman in the fog is still out there. And she's waiting for someone to make a mistake. Don't let it be you. Boyd here. Been hauling freight across Texas for 19 years, and I thought I'd seen everything these highways had to offer. Drunk drivers, tornado warnings, ice storms that turn I-20 into a skating rink. But nothing prepared me for what happened that September night when I stopped to check my load outside Odessa. I was running auto parts from El Paso to Dallas, a regular route I'd done probably 100 times. The loading dock worker at the El Paso warehouse was a guy named Elmer, been there as long as I'd been driving. Quiet fellow, always did his job right, never had any issues with loads he supervised. That's why what happened later made even less sense. It was around 11 p.m. when I pulled into a rest area on I-20, about 60 miles east of Odessa. Nothing special about the place. Just a couple of concrete buildings, some picnic tables, and parking for maybe 20 trucks. That night, there were only 3 other rigs there, all dark, drivers probably asleep. I needed to check my load straps. DOT regulations require us to inspect our cargo within the first 50 miles, and then every 3 hours or 150 miles after that. I was right at that 150-mile mark, and even though the load had felt solid, you don't skip inspections. That's how accidents happen. The night was clear. Temperature had dropped to maybe 70 degrees. Good weather for West Texas. I grabbed my flashlight and work gloves, walked around to the back of my 53-foot trailer. The seal was intact, number matching what was on my paperwork. I cut it with my knife and swung open the heavy doors. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness inside the trailer. Pallets of boxed auto parts, just like the manifest said. Brake pads, alternators, water pumps, all the usual stuff. Everything was strapped down tight, hadn't shifted an inch during the drive. But something felt off. Can't explain it exactly, but after 19 years, you develop a sense for when things aren't right. Maybe it was the smell, a chemical odor that didn't belong with auto parts. Or maybe it was how some of the boxes seemed newer than others, their cardboard still crisp while others looked weathered. I climbed up into the trailer, flashlight sweeping left and right. That's when I noticed it. Third pallet from the back, left side. One of the boxes had a small tear in the corner, like it had been opened and hastily resealed. Through the gap, I could see plastic wrapping, but it wasn't the usual clear industrial plastic. This was black, heavy-duty, the kind you'd use for weatherproofing. I pulled at the tear, widening it enough to get a better look. Inside the black plastic was another box, unmarked, about the size of a microwave. No shipping labels, no handling instructions, nothing. Just a plain brown box that had no business being inside an auto parts shipment. My first thought was drugs. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to use an unwitting trucker to smuggle contraband. But drug runners are usually smarter about their packaging. This was sloppy, amateur hour. Plus, Elmer had loaded this himself. I'd watched him do it. No way he was involved in drug smuggling. The man had grandkids, went to church every Sunday. I pulled out my phone to call my dispatcher, a woman named Velma who worked the night shift. But I had no signal. Not unusual in West Texas, but inconvenient as hell. I'd have to drive a few miles to find coverage. I was about to close up the trailer when I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. I turned, expecting to see another trucker coming to check on the noise. Instead, there was a man I'd never seen before, standing about 20 feet away, just watching me. He was tall, maybe 6'3", wearing jeans and a dark jacket despite the warm night. Clean-shaven, probably mid-40s, with the kind of build that suggested manual labor. But it was his stillness that bothered me. He wasn't walking toward me or away, just standing there, hands at his sides, watching. "Help you with something?" I called out. He didn't answer immediately, just kept staring. Then, in a voice that was surprisingly soft for such a big man, he said, "That your rig?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Just wondering. Saw you checking your load. Everything all right?" Something about the way he said load made my skin crawl. Too much emphasis, like he knew something was wrong with it. "Everything's fine," I said, starting to close the trailer doors. "Just a routine inspection." "Find anything interesting?" I stopped. "What makes you think I'd find something interesting?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just making conversation. Lonely out here at night. Name's Clyde." He took a step closer, and I instinctively moved my hand to my pocket where I kept a folding knife. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. "I need to get rolling," I said. "Long drive ahead." "Dallas, right?" Clyde said. "That's where you're headed?" I hadn't told him that. The cold feeling in my stomach got worse. "How'd you know that?" "Lucky guess. Most loads from El Paso heading east go to Dallas or Houston. 50-50 shot. Maybe." But the way he said it, casual and confident, suggested he knew exactly where I was going, which meant he'd either been following me or had inside information. Like I said, I need to go. I finished closing the trailer doors, but didn't lock them yet. Wanted to keep my options open. Sure. But Boyd, before you go, maybe we should talk about what you found in there." He knew my name. This stranger in the middle of nowhere knew my name. "I didn't find anything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Come on now. We both know that's not true. That box that doesn't belong, the one wrapped in black plastic, that's what we need to talk about." My hand closed around the knife in my pocket. "Who's we?" "Just some concerned parties. People who'd very much like to know how that box ended up in your trailer. Because you see, Boyd, that box was supposed to be on a different truck. Your friend Elmer made a mistake." "I don't know what you're talking about." Clyde sighed, like he was disappointed in me. "Boyd, I'm trying to help you here. That box you found? It's dangerous. Not in the way you're thinking, nothing's going to explode. But the people looking for it, they're not as friendly as I am. If they find out you have it, well, that would be unfortunate." "Are you threatening me?" "Quite the opposite. I'm trying to keep you alive. That box needs to disappear, and you need to forget you ever saw it. Complete your run to Dallas, deliver your auto parts, and go home to your life. Pretend tonight never happened. And if I don't, then you'll meet the people I'm trying to protect you from. And Boyd, you really don't want that. A pair of headlights swept across the rest area as another truck pulled in. Clyde glanced at it, then back at me. Think about what I said. You've got about 100 miles before you need to make a decision. There's a weigh station at the Colorado City exit. If that box is still in your trailer when you get there, things will get complicated. He turned and walked away, not toward any vehicle I could see, but toward the darkness at the edge of the rest area. I watched until he disappeared into the scrub brush, then quickly locked my trailer and climbed back into my cab. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. Who the hell was Clyde? How did he know about the box? And more importantly, who were these unfriendly people he'd mentioned? I pulled out of the rest area and back onto I-20, checking my mirrors constantly for any sign of following vehicles. The highway was mostly empty, just the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. My phone finally found a signal about 10 miles down the road. I called Velma immediately. She answered on the second ring, her raspy smoker's voice familiar and comforting. Boyd? Everything all right? You're not due to check in for another hour. Velma, I need you to look something up for me. The load I'm carrying from El Paso. Was there anything unusual about the paperwork? Unusual how? I don't know. Last-minute changes, special instructions, anything odd. I heard her typing on her computer. Let me see. Okay, standard auto parts shipment. Loaded this afternoon by... That's weird. What? The dock supervisor signature. It's not Elmer's. What do you mean? Elmer loaded it himself. I watched him. According to this, someone named R. Valdez signed off on it. And there's a note here about an additional pallet added to the shipment. Special delivery, same destination. Velma, I think I'm carrying something I shouldn't be. What kind of something? I don't know, but someone just approached me at a rest stop, knew my name, knew my route, and warned me about it. Jesus, Boyd. You need to call the police. And tell them what? I found a suspicious box. They'll want to search the whole load. And if there's contraband in there, guess who gets blamed? Better than ending up dead. She had a point, but I'd seen too many drivers get railroaded by law enforcement. Find drugs in your trailer, even if you didn't know about them, and suddenly you're looking at federal charges. Best case scenario, you lose your CDL. Worst case, you're doing time. I need to think, I said. I'll call you back. Boyd, don't do anything stupid. I hung up and kept driving, my mind racing. The weigh station at Colorado City was about 40 miles ahead. If Clyde was telling the truth, something would happen there if I still had the box. But what? And who was he really working for? I pulled into a well-lit truck stop near Big Spring to think and fuel up. The place was busy, which made me feel safer. Hard to do anything violent with 50 witnesses around. I filled my tank, then climbed back into the trailer with a better flashlight and a box cutter. The mysterious box was heavier than I'd expected, maybe 40 pounds. I cut through the black plastic carefully, revealing the unmarked brown box underneath. No tape, just folded cardboard flaps. I opened them slowly, half expecting something to jump out. Inside was foam padding surrounding a metal case, like something you'd use for expensive camera equipment. The case had 2 padlocks on it, serious ones, the kind you'd need bolt cutters to remove. There was also an envelope taped to the top of the case. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address in Dallas, not the auto parts warehouse where I was supposed to deliver. Below the address was a phone number and a single line of text. Call when you arrive. Come alone. This was bad. Really bad. Whatever was in that case, people were willing to go to serious lengths to move it secretly. And now,
I was caught in the middle of it. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Boyd? It wasn't Clyde. This voice was female, professional, cold. My name is Miss White. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. The metal case you're looking at right now would suggest otherwise. My blood went cold. They were watching me. I scanned the truck stop, looking for anyone suspicious, but there were too many people, too many vehicles. Relax, Boyd. If I wanted to hurt you, we wouldn't be talking. I'm proposing a simple exchange. You bring the case to the address on that paper, I pay you $50,000, and we never speak again. 50,000? Cash, untraceable. All you have to do is make a small detour in Dallas. And if I say no, then you'll deliver your auto parts as scheduled, and when you open your trailer in Dallas, the police will find 5 kilos of methamphetamine hidden in your cargo. You'll protest your innocence, of course, but who'll believe you? Especially when they check your phone records and find you've been in contact with known drug dealers. You're setting me up. No, Boyd, I'm offering you a way out. The setup is already in place. Has been since Elmer loaded your trailer. Oh, you thought Elmer was clean? He owes the wrong people a lot of money. Gambling debts. They made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I felt sick. Elmer, who I'd known for years, had set me up. How do I know you won't kill me after I deliver the case? Because killing you would be messy and unnecessary. I'm a businesswoman, Boyd. Violence is expensive and attracts attention. As long as you do what you're told, you're worth more to me alive. I need time to think. You have until you reach Dallas. But Boyd, don't even think about going to the police. We have people there too. The moment you walk into a station, we'll know. She hung up. I stood there in my trailer, surrounded by auto parts and criminal conspiracy, trying to figure out how my life had gone so wrong so fast. I closed everything up and got back in my cab. The way station was 30 miles away. If I took the bypass, I could avoid it, but that would mean going off route, which would flag my GPS tracker at the company. Everything I did was being watched, recorded, monitored. I called Velma back. I need you to do me a favor, I said. Don't ask questions, just do it. Boyd, you're scaring me. I need you to log that I'm taking the bypass around the Colorado City way station. Mechanical issue, strange noise in the engine. That's falsifying records. Please, Velma. I can't explain right now, but it might save my life. There was a long pause. Then, all right. But you owe me an explanation when this is over. If I survive this, I'll tell you everything. I took the bypass, adding 20 miles to my route, but avoiding the way station. As I passed the exit where it would have been, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 3 black SUVs parked on the shoulder, right where they could watch traffic coming from the west. They were waiting for me. Clyde had been telling the truth about that at least. Whatever was supposed to happen at that way station, I'd avoided it. But that just meant the problem would follow me to Dallas. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart move with the bypass, but we're still watching. I had about 3 hours until Dallas. 3 hours to figure out how to survive this. The metal case sat in my trailer like a ticking bomb, even though I had no idea what was actually inside it. Drugs, money, weapons, something worse? One thing was clear. I was trapped between 2 groups of dangerous people, both of whom knew exactly where I was and where I was going. The only question was which one would get to me first, and whether I'd live long enough to find out what this was all about. The closer I got to Dallas, the more traffic appeared on I-20. By 2 a.m., there was a steady stream of vehicles, mostly other trucks, making their late-night runs. Safety in numbers, I thought, though I knew that was an illusion. These people, whoever they were, had already shown they could track me anywhere. My phone rang again. This time it was Velma. Boyd, something weird just happened. I got a call from someone claiming to be from DOT, asking about your route and cargo. At 2 in the morning? That's what I thought. I told them they'd need to submit an official request during business hours, but they got pushy, said it was a matter of national security. National security? What the hell was in that case? What did you tell them? Nothing. I hung up and called you. Boyd, what have you gotten yourself into? I honestly don't know, but Velma, if anything happens to me, tell my ex-wife that the emergency fund is in the storage unit behind the old toolbox. Don't talk like that. Just remember it, okay? I hung up and took the exit for a 24-hour diner I knew in Weatherford, about 30 miles from Dallas. I needed to think, and I couldn't do that while driving. The place was half full of truckers and late-night travelers. I took a booth in the back where I could watch the door. I'd barely sat down when Clyde slid into the seat across from me. "Hello, Boyd. Smart move avoiding the way station. How did you—" I stopped. Of course he knew where I was. They all did. "Coffee?" He flagged down a waitress like we were old friends having a late-night chat. "2 coffees, please. Black." After she left, he leaned forward. "You're in a difficult position. Miss White has made you an offer, I assume?" $50,000 to deliver the case. Clyde whistled softly. That's more than usual. She must really want it back. What's in it? You don't want to know. Trust me, the less you know, the better your chances of walking away from this. Then what do you want? I represent parties who would very much like Miss White to not get that case. We're prepared to match her offer, $50,000 to hand it over to us instead. And then what? She frames me for drug possession? We can handle Miss White. She's not as connected as she thinks. The drugs in your trailer? We've already taken care of them. What do you mean? While you were driving, some friends of mine paid a visit to your trailer. Don't worry, we were very careful. The drugs Miss White planted have been removed and destroyed. You're clean. I stared at him. You broke into my trailer while I was driving? Technically, we had a key. Elmer was very cooperative once we explained his options. You got to Elmer? Let's just say his gambling debts have been resolved and he's decided to take an early retirement, somewhere far from Texas. The waitress brought our coffees. Clyde waited until she was gone before continuing. Here's what's going to happen, Boyd. You're going to continue to Dallas. You're going to deliver your auto parts as scheduled. But first, you're going to meet me at a location I'll text you, and you're going to hand over that case. And if Miss White's people are watching? They are. But they won't interfere, not if they're smart. Why should I trust you over her? Because I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a clean exit from a situation you never should have been in. Miss White, on the other hand, will never let you go. Even if you deliver the case, you'll be a loose end. And she doesn't like loose ends. He pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. There's $10,000 in there, a down payment. You'll get the rest when you hand over the case. I looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. What happens if I just go to the police right now? Then you'll never make it to the station. Miss White has 2 men in a blue sedan in the parking lot right now. They're not here for the pancakes. I glanced out the window. Sure enough, a blue sedan sat in the corner of the lot, engine running, 2 shapes visible inside. However, Clyde continued, if you agree to work with us, those men will have an unfortunate encounter with the state police in about 10 minutes. DUI checkpoint up the road. They'll be tied up for hours. You can arrange that? We can arrange a lot of things. The question is, are you going to be smart about this? I thought about my options. There weren't many. Go with Miss White and probably end up dead. Go with Clyde and maybe survive. Go to the police and definitely get caught in the crossfire. All right, I said, taking the envelope. Where do I meet you? He smiled, genuinely this time. I'll text you the address. Be there at 5 a.m. And Boyd, don't open the case. No matter how curious you get, don't open it. He left money for the coffee and walked out.
5 minutes later, I watched the blue sedan suddenly pull out of the lot, driving erratically. 30 seconds after that, 2 state police cars roared past with lights flashing, following the sedan. Clyde hadn't been bluffing about his connections. I got back in my truck and continued toward Dallas. The text came through as I hit the city limits, an address for a warehouse in an industrial district. I had 2 hours to kill before the meeting. I pulled into a truck stop to wait and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. What was worth $50,000 to multiple parties? What could be so important that they'd orchestrate this elaborate scheme? Curiosity got the better of me. I went back to the trailer with a set of bolt cutters I kept in my toolkit. Clyde had said not to open the case, but I needed to know what I was risking my life for. The padlocks were stronger than they looked. It took several minutes of work to cut through them. My hands were shaking as I opened the case. Inside, nested in foam, were 6 glass vials filled with clear liquid. Each vial was about the size of a pill bottle, sealed with wax and labeled with only a number. There was also a manila folder. I opened it and found medical documents, all in technical language I couldn't understand. But one phrase stood out, repeated several times. Project Sandstorm. I took photos of everything with my phone, then closed the case. Whatever Project Sandstorm was, it was worth killing for. The smart thing would be to dump the whole thing and run. But I knew they'd find me. Both sides had already shown they could track me anywhere. At 4:45 a.m., I drove to the warehouse address Clyde had sent. It was in a rundown industrial area, the kind of place where no one asked questions. The building looked abandoned, windows boarded up, weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot. Clyde was waiting by a loading dock, alone as far as I could see, but I knew there had to be others nearby. "Right on time," he said as I pulled up. "Any problems?" "No, but I want answers. What's Project Sandstorm?" His expression hardened. "You opened it." I needed to know what I was risking my neck for. "Stupid. Really stupid. Now you know too much." "So tell me the rest. I'm already in this deep." Clyde sighed. Project Sandstorm was a biological weapons program, officially discontinued 10 years ago. Those vials contain a weaponized pathogen. Released in a populated area, it could kill thousands before anyone knew what was happening. I felt my legs go weak. I'd been driving around with a biological weapon in my trailer. "Miss White is a broker," Clyde continued. "She sells things that aren't supposed to exist to people who aren't supposed to have them. Those vials were stolen from a decommissioned military lab. She was going to sell them to the highest bidder. And you? Who do you work for?" "People who want to make sure those vials are destroyed properly. Officially, we don't exist. Unofficially, we clean up messes like this." "Your government? I'm nothing. I'm a ghost. And after today, so are you. You're going to forget this ever happened." "What about Miss White?" "She's about to have a very bad day. Federal agents are raiding her Dallas operation as we speak. By noon, she'll be in custody." "How did you know she'd use my truck?" "We didn't. We've been watching Elmer for months, knew he was compromised. When he loaded that extra package onto your truck, we saw an opportunity. You were never supposed to find it. You were supposed to deliver it unknowingly, and we'd intercept it in Dallas. But I did find it. Yes, your inspection routine is admirable, if inconvenient." A black van pulled up beside us. 2 men in tactical gear got out, faces covered. One of them took the case from my trailer, handling it like it might explode at any moment. They loaded it into the van and drove away without a word. Clyde handed me another envelope. "The rest of your payment, $40,000, as promised." "What happens now?" "Now you deliver your auto parts. You go home. You forget this happened. If anyone asks, you had an uneventful run from El Paso to Dallas." "What about the documentation? The calls to Velma?" "Already handled.
Your company's records show a normal delivery. No detours, no mechanical problems. Velma will remember it the same way. You altered her memory? We altered the computer records and had a conversation with her. She's agreed that remembering things differently is in everyone's best interest. I felt sick. These people could rewrite reality, make events disappear. One more thing, Clyde said. Miss White had contingencies. Some of her people might not get the message that the operation is over. Watch your back for the next few weeks. That's comforting. We'll be watching too. Discreetly. If anyone approaches you about this, call this number. He handed me a business card with just a phone number, no name. Day or night, we'll respond. And after a few weeks? After that, you're on your own. But by then, anyone who might care will be in prison or dead. He walked away, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. I stood there holding $50,000 in cash and a business card that might as well have been a direct line to the CIA or NSA or some alphabet agency that didn't officially exist. I delivered the auto parts without incident. The warehouse workers unloaded everything, checking off items on their tablets, completely unaware that their shipment had almost included weapons-grade biological agents. The drive home to Houston took forever. Every car that followed me for more than a mile made me nervous. Every helicopter overhead seemed suspicious. When I finally pulled into my driveway that afternoon, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, afraid to go inside. But my house was untouched. No signs of entry, nothing disturbed. I hid the money in various places, small amounts that wouldn't attract attention. Then I took a shower and tried to wash away the last 24 hours. That night, Velma called. Boyd, just checking that you made your delivery okay? Yeah, all good. Normal run. Good. For some reason, I had it in my head that there was some problem, but when I checked the logs, everything looked fine. Must have been thinking of a different driver. Must have been. Get some rest, Boyd. You sound tired. I hung up, marveling at how thoroughly Clyde's people had covered the tracks. If I hadn't lived through it, I wouldn't believe it had happened either. But I had the money to prove it. And the photos on my phone, though I'd delete those soon. Too dangerous to keep. For the next 2 weeks, I stayed local. Short runs only, nothing overnight. I varied my routes, checked my mirrors constantly, installed new locks on my doors. The paranoia was exhausting. Then, exactly 2 weeks after the incident, I got a text from an unknown number. All clear. Stay safe. I knew it was Clyde, or someone working with him. Miss White's organization had been dismantled. The threat was over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. Every time I passed that rest area outside Odessa, I remembered Clyde stepping out of the darkness. Every time I saw Elmer's replacement at the El Paso warehouse, I wondered what had really happened to him. The money helped. I paid off debts, set aside emergency funds, even took a vacation for the first time in years. But it came with a price. The knowledge that there were people out there moving biological weapons in truck trailers, that legitimate businesses were fronts for international arms dealers, that the government had shadow operatives who could make problems disappear. I still drive. Still haul freight across Texas. But I don't do inspections at rest areas anymore. I only check my load at well-lit truck stops with security cameras and plenty of witnesses. And I never, ever accept last-minute cargo additions. 3 months passed before I heard from Clyde again. I'd almost convinced myself that the nightmare was over, that I could return to my normal life of hauling freight without looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. Then he called me on a Tuesday morning while I was having breakfast at a Flying J outside Austin. Boyd, we need to talk. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. I thought we were done. So did we, but something's come up. Something related to your El Paso run. Miss White's in prison. You told me... She is. This is about Elmer. My stomach dropped. What about him? He's dead. His body was found in Juarez yesterday. He'd been tortured. I set down my coffee, my appetite gone. Who? That's what we're trying to figure out. Can you meet me in San Antonio tonight? Same protocols as before. I'm hauling a load to Corpus Christi. After that, then. Midnight, Alamo Quarry Market parking lot, northeast corner. He hung up before I could argue. I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on driving, but my mind kept going back to Elmer. Poor Elmer, who just wanted to pay off his gambling debts and ended up dead in Mexico. The run to Corpus went smoothly, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being followed. Every vehicle seemed suspicious. A green pickup stayed behind me for 50 miles. A white van appeared at 3 different truck stops. Probably coincidence, but in my world, coincidences had become dangerous. I made it to San Antonio by 11:30 and found the meeting spot. It was a popular shopping area during the day, but at midnight it was nearly deserted. Clyde was already there, leaning against a black SUV I hadn't seen before. "Thanks for coming," he said, but his usual confidence was missing. He looked tired, worried. "What happened to Elmer?" "We relocated him to Juarez with new identification, money to start over. He was supposed to lay low, stay off the radar. Instead, he started gambling again. Wrong people noticed an American with cash to burn. They grabbed him 4 days ago." "Why torture him?" "They wanted information. About the shipment, about who he was working with, about you."
"Me? Why would they care about me?" "Because you're the only one who knows the full chain of events. Elmer loaded it, but you transported it. You found it. You met with both sides. You're the common denominator. But the case was recovered. The weapons were destroyed. It's over." "Not quite." Clyde pulled out a tablet, showed me a photograph. It was one of the vials from the case, but this one had a red label instead of clear. "This was taken 2 days ago in Mexico City. Someone's selling vials that match the Project Sandstorm specifications." "That's impossible. You said there were only 6. "That's what we thought. But either someone made copies, or there was a second shipment we didn't know about." "And you think Elmer knew something?" "The people who tortured him certainly thought so. And now they know about you." I felt cold despite the warm night. "How much did he tell them?" "Everything, probably. Your name, your roots, your company. These people don't stop until they get what they want." "So what do I do?" "For now, nothing. Go about your normal routine. We're watching you and we'll intervene if necessary. But there's something else." He handed me a phone, a basic flip phone like drug dealers use. "This is a secure line. If anyone approaches you about Elmer or the shipment, you call the only number programmed in there. Don't try to handle it yourself." "What makes you think they'll approach me?" "Because 3 hours ago, someone broke into the El Paso warehouse where Elmer worked. They went through employment records, shipping manifests, everything related to that night. Your name was all over those documents." I took the phone, its weight feeling heavier than it should. "How long until this is over?" "Unknown. Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on how badly they want those vials and how much they're willing to risk." "And Velma, my dispatcher, is she in danger?" "We've taken precautions. She's being monitored, though she doesn't know it. Your company's computer systems are being watched for any unauthorized access. You've turned my whole life into a surveillance state. We've kept you alive. There's a difference." He got back in his SUV and drove away, leaving me alone in the empty parking lot. I sat in my truck for an hour, trying to process everything. Elmer was dead. Someone was selling biological weapons, and I was caught in the middle of it again. The next few days were normal, or as normal as they could be under the circumstances. I hauled steel beams from Houston to Fort Worth, produced from the Valley to Austin. No one approached me. Nothing seemed out of place. I almost started to relax. Then Velma called me on Friday night, her voice shaking. "Boyd, something weird just happened. A man came to the dispatch office asking about you." "What kind of man?" "Hispanic, maybe 30. Said he was a friend of yours from El Paso. Wanted to know your schedule so he could meet up with you.
What did you tell him?
Nothing. Company policy, we don't give out driver information. But Boyd, he didn't like that answer. He got aggressive, started demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort him out. Did he give a name? Carlos something. I didn't catch the last name. Boyd, who was that? I don't know, but if he comes back, you call security immediately. Don't engage with him at all. I hung up and dialed the number on the burner phone Clyde had given me. It rang once. We know, Clyde's voice said. Carlos Mendoza works for the Juarez cartel. We're handling it. He went to my dispatcher, and he's currently being detained by DEA agents who happen to be conducting a raid on his hotel. Convenient timing. How many more are there? At least 3 that we've identified. They're all looking for you, but we're making sure they don't find you. I can't keep running forever. You won't have to. We're closing in on the source of the fake vials. Once we shut that down, the cartel will lose interest. And if you don't shut it down, then we'll have to get more creative. I didn't like the sound of that. Clyde's version of creative usually involved people disappearing or having convenient accidents. That weekend, I stayed home. Didn't take any runs, didn't leave my house except to get groceries. I installed new security cameras, bought a better gun safe, and made sure my neighbors knew to call the cops if they saw anyone suspicious around my property. Sunday night, the motion sensors in my backyard went off. I checked the cameras and saw a figure in dark clothing moving along the fence line. They were trying to stay in the shadows, but the infrared caught them clearly. I grabbed my phone to call 911, then remembered Clyde's warning about the cartel having sources in law enforcement. Instead, I used the burner phone. We see him, Clyde said immediately. Stay inside, away from windows. Do not engage. I watched on my phone as the figure reached my back door and pulled out what looked like lockpicks. Then, suddenly, they collapsed. No sound, no flash, just dropped like someone had cut their strings. 2 men appeared from nowhere, dressed in black tactical gear. They grabbed the unconscious intruder and carried him away. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. The burner phone rang. Threat neutralized, Clyde said. This one was freelance, hired by the cartel to grab you. He won't be bothering anyone again. Did you kill him? No, but he'll wake up in a Mexican prison with a kilo of cocaine in his possession. He'll be too busy defending himself to worry about you. How many more? This might have been the last one. The cartel's getting the message that you're protected. It's becoming too expensive for them to pursue. But he was wrong. 2 days later, while I was hauling lumber from Beaumont to San Antonio, I noticed I was being followed. Not by 1 vehicle, but by 3, taking turns staying behind me so it wouldn't be obvious. I called the burner phone. We see them, Clyde said. Keep driving normally. Take your scheduled exit for the way station in Seguin. You want me to go to a way station while being followed? Trust me. I took the exit as instructed. The 3 vehicles followed. But as I pulled into the way station, all hell broke loose. State police cars appeared from everywhere, surrounding the 3 vehicles. Officers with assault rifles ordered everyone out at gunpoint. I pulled through the way station without stopping, just another trucker continuing his route. In my mirrors, I saw the followers being arrested, their vehicles searched. The burner phone rang again. Anonymous tip about drug runners following a truck, Clyde explained. They'll find enough methamphetamine in those vehicles to put everyone away for 20 years. You planted drugs on them? Turnabout's fair play. They were planning to do worse to you. That night, I made my delivery and headed home. But instead of going to my house, I went to a motel. Something felt wrong, like the air before a storm. All these attempts to grab me, they felt like distractions, like someone was keeping Clyde's people busy while the real threat moved into position. I was right. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. My real phone, not the burner. The caller ID showed it was Velma. Boyd?
But it wasn't Velma's voice. It was male, accented, cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who has your friend Velma. She's quite upset. Would you like to speak with her?" I heard muffled crying in the background, then Velma's voice. "Boyd, don't," before being cut off. "Here's what's going to happen," the man continued. "You're going to tell me everything about the shipment from El Paso. What was in it, who you gave it to, where it is now." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please don't insult my intelligence. Elmer told us everything before he died. We know you found something that didn't belong. We know you met with buyers. We just need the details. Let Velma go. She doesn't know anything. That's probably true, but you care about her, which makes her valuable. You have 1 hour to decide. Call this number back with answers, or she dies." He hung up. I immediately called the burner phone. "We heard," Clyde said before I could speak. "We're tracking Velma's phone now. Stay where you are." "They'll kill her." "No, they won't. They need her alive to maintain leverage. We'll get her back." "How?" "Leave that to us. Do not call them back. Do not try to negotiate. Let us handle this." The next hour was the longest of my life. I paced the motel room, checking my phone every 30 seconds. The deadline came and went. My phone rang again. "You didn't call back," the accented voice said. "That was a mistake." I heard Velma scream in the background. "Wait!" I shouted. "I'll tell you everything. Just don't hurt her." Too late for that. But I'm feeling generous. You have another hour. This time, don't test me. He hung up. I was about to call Clyde when the motel room door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear rushed in, weapons drawn. For a second, I thought the cartel had found me. "Boyd Sawyer?" one of them asked. "Agent Martinez, DEA. You need to come with us. Now." "I can't. They have... Velma Rodriguez is safe, extracted 17 minutes ago. But the people who took her are about to realize that. We need to move." I grabbed my things and followed them to a black Suburban. As we drove, Agent Martinez explained. "Your friend Clyde asked us to intervene. Apparently this situation has escalated beyond his team's parameters." "Where's Velma?" "Safe house. She's shaken but uninjured. The men who took her are in custody." "So it's over." "Not quite. We need you to make that call." "What?" "Call them back. Tell them you'll meet them to share information."
We'll use it to roll up the rest of their network.
"You want me to be bait?"
You'll be completely protected. Snipers, undercover agents, the works. These people have been flooding Texas with fake biological weapons, causing panic, extorting money. It ends tonight. I made the call. The accented voice was surprised but pleased. He gave me an address, an abandoned truck stop near Pecos. Midnight meeting. Come alone. Of course it was an abandoned truck stop. These people had no imagination. The DEA set up their operation like a military campaign. By 11 p.m., they had agents positioned everywhere around the truck stop. Snipers on nearby buildings, undercover vehicles in strategic positions. I wore a wire and had a GPS tracker sewn into my boots. I arrived at midnight exactly. The place was dark except for a single light pole that flickered intermittently. 3 vehicles were waiting, 2 SUVs and a panel van. About 8 men total, all armed. The leader, the one with the accented voice, was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 25, with cartel tattoos visible on his neck. "Boyd," he said with a smile that reminded me too much of Gus from Dermot. "So good to finally meet you. Where's Velma?" "Safe, as I promised. Now tell me about the vials." "They were biological weapons, Project Sandstorm, military grade." "We know that. Where are they now?" "Government took them, destroyed them, supposedly." "All of them?" 6 vials. That's all there were." He laughed. 6? Try 60. There were 10 cases, not 1. You only found the first.
My blood went cold. If he was telling the truth, there were 54 vials of weaponized pathogens still out there. "Where are the others?" I asked. "That's what we're trying to find out." Elmer swore he only loaded one case, but shipping records show 10 cases left that warehouse. Someone diverted them, hid them. We thought it was you. "I only saw one case." "Then who has the others?" Before I could answer, all hell broke loose. Flashbang grenades exploded around us. DEA agents swarmed in from all directions. The cartel members tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed in seconds. I hit the ground as gunfire erupted overhead. The leader tried to run but was tackled by 2 agents. Within 3 minutes, it was over. 8 cartel members in custody, no casualties on either side. Agent Martinez helped me up. "You did good. We got them all." He said there were 10 cases, not one. Martinez's expression darkened. "We'll interrogate them, find out if that's true." But we never got the chance. During transport to federal detention, the convoy was ambushed. Professional, military-style tactics. All 8 cartel members were killed, along with 3 DEA agents. The attackers vanished without a trace. Clyde called me that night. "You need to disappear for a while," he said. "This is bigger than we thought." Who ambushed the convoy? Unknown. But whoever it was, they didn't want those men talking. Someone's cleaning house, eliminating everyone who knows about the other 9 cases. Including me? Possibly. We're arranging safe passage for you. New identity, new location, until we figure this out. What about my life? My job? Your life is more important than your job. Pack light, be ready to move in 1 hour. But I never got the chance to run. I was packing a single duffel bag when I heard the truck pull up outside. Not a car, not an SUV, but an 18-wheeler. The diesel engine's rumble was unmistakable. I looked out the window and my heart nearly stopped. It was my truck, my company truck that should have been parked at the yard. The driver's door opened and Velma stepped out. But something was wrong. Her movements were too stiff, too mechanical, and her eyes, even from a distance, looked empty. I grabbed the burner phone to call Clyde, but there was no signal. They were jamming cell phones again. Velma walked to my front door and knocked. Not rang the doorbell, knocked. 3 times, evenly spaced. "Boyd?" Her voice was flat, wrong. "I need to talk to you." I didn't answer, moving instead to my bedroom where I kept a loaded .45. When I came back, she was still knocking. Same pattern, same rhythm, like a machine. "Boyd, I know you're in there. We need to discuss the shipment." That's when I noticed the small device behind her ear, barely visible under her hair. Some kind of earpiece, or worse, something controlling her. I made a decision that probably saved my life. I went out the back door. 2 men were waiting for me. Not cartel, not government agents. These were different. Military bearing, expensive equipment, no identifying marks. One of them raised a tranquilizer gun. I dove behind my shed as the dart whistled past. The .45 was in my hand, but I didn't want to shoot anyone yet. These might be Clyde's people. "Mr. Sawyer," one of them called out, his voice cultured, British accent. "There's no need for violence. We simply want to talk." "Then why the tranq gun?" "Insurance. You have a reputation for being difficult." "Who are you?" "Private military contractors. We've been hired to recover some missing property." "The vials?" "All 60 of them, yes. Our employer is quite insistent." "I don't have them." "We know, but you're the key to finding them. You see, Elmer did something clever before he died. He sent you something." "No, he didn't. Check your truck's sleeper compartment, behind the medicine cabinet. He hid it there during his last shift. I hadn't been in my company truck for 3 days. If Elmer had hidden something there, I wouldn't know." Let Velma go, I said. Then we can talk. She's not a hostage. She's here voluntarily. The device you noticed is merely a neural stimulator helping her overcome the trauma of her recent kidnapping. She wanted to come to make sure you were safe. That was complete bullshit, but I played along. Fine, I'll check the truck, but you stay here. I'm afraid we'll need to accompany you. Then I'm afraid I'll have to decline your offer. There was a long pause. Then the British voice said, "Check your kitchen window." I glanced toward the house. A red laser dot was centered on my chest. Sniper. Now then, the voice continued. Shall we proceed civilized, or do we need to escalate? I lowered the .45. Let's go look at the truck. The two men emerged from cover, weapons lowered but ready. We walked to my truck where Velma was still standing, that empty expression on her face. "Hello, Boyd," she said when she saw me. "I'm sorry about this." "It's not your fault," I told her, though I wasn't sure she could really hear me. I climbed into the sleeper compartment, the two men following. Behind the small medicine cabinet, just where they'd said, was a package wrapped in plastic. Inside was a GPS device and a single key with a number on it. 1847. "Storage unit key," the British man said. "The GPS will lead us to the facility." "How did you know about this?" "Elmer sent a coded message before he died. Took us a while to decrypt it. He was trying to protect you, actually. Thought if you didn't know about it, you'd be safe." The GPS showed a location in El Paso, right back where this all started, a storage facility about 2 miles from the warehouse where Elmer had worked. "We'll need you to come with us," the British man said. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "I'm afraid you don't have a choice. You see, the key is biometric. It won't work without your thumbprint. Elmer was thorough." I looked at the key more carefully. Sure enough, there was a small sensor pad on the head. High tech for a storage unit, but if you were hiding biological weapons, you'd want security. "What happens after you get the vials?" "You go free. Our employer has no interest in you beyond your usefulness in recovering the property." "And who is your employer?" "Someone who invested a great deal of money in Project Sandstorm and is unhappy that their investment has gone missing. The weapons were illegal. Illegal is a matter of perspective. To some, they're weapons. To others, they're insurance policies. To my employer, they're simply products that need delivering." We drove through the night in a convoy of 3 vehicles. Velma was in the lead car with the British man who'd introduced himself as Wellington. I was in the middle vehicle with 2 guards. The third car contained 4 more contractors. The neural stimulator, or whatever was controlling Velma, kept her docile the entire trip. She responded to questions but volunteered nothing. It was deeply disturbing seeing her like that, knowing the real Velma would be fighting tooth and nail. We reached El Paso just after dawn. The storage facility was in an industrial area, surrounded by warehouses and truck stops. Unit 1847 was in the back corner, a climate-controlled space about the size of a 2-car garage. Wellington handed me the key. "Your thumb on the sensor, please." I pressed my thumb to the pad. Nothing happened. "Try again." Still nothing. The third try yielded the same result. Wellington's expression darkened. "You're doing something wrong." "I'm putting my thumb on the sensor. That's all I can do." He pulled out a satellite phone and made a call, speaking in what sounded like Russian. After a heated conversation, he hung up. "It seems Elmer was even more clever than we thought. The key needs your thumbprint and his. A dead man's switch, literally." "Elmer's dead?" "Yes, but his body is in the Juarez morgue. We'll have to retrieve it." "You're going to cut off his thumb?" "Unless you have a better suggestion." This was spiraling into madness, but before anyone could move, we heard sirens. Lots of them, getting closer. Wellington cursed. Someone talked. The storage facility was suddenly surrounded by law enforcement. FBI, DEA, ATF, even Texas Rangers. They'd brought an army. "Drop your weapons!" echoed from multiple bullhorns.
Wellington looked at me with something like respect. You called them. Not me. Then who? The answer came in the form of Clyde, walking calmly through the police line with his hands visible. He approached our group like he was taking a Sunday stroll. Hello, Wellington. Been a while. Clyde. Wellington's voice was ice. I should have known. My employer wants the same thing yours does. The difference is, we're willing to involve law enforcement to get it. You know that won't work. The moment they open that unit, everyone dies. What? I asked. What are you talking about? Clyde looked at me sadly. The storage unit is booby-trapped. Elmer really didn't want anyone getting those vials. He rigged them with explosives, opened the door wrong, and the whole block goes up. So we're at an impasse, Wellington said. Not quite. Clyde pulled out a tablet. We've been monitoring your employer's communications. Seems he's been selling pre-orders for those vials to some very unfriendly governments. That makes this a matter of national security. You're bluffing. Clyde showed him the tablet. Wellington's face went pale as he read. Your employer sold out his own country for profit, Clyde said. The government is offering you a deal, full immunity in exchange for your cooperation. And if we refuse, then you're looking at terrorism charges, life without parole if you're lucky. Wellington was quiet for a long moment, calculating odds. Then he looked at his men and nodded. They slowly placed their weapons on the ground. Velma, I said. What about her? Clyde walked over to her, examined the device behind her ear. Neural inhibitor. Nasty piece of tech, but removable. He carefully detached it. Velma collapsed, but I caught her before she hit the ground. Boyd. She blinked, confused. Where are we? El Paso. Long story. You're safe now. The next few hours were controlled chaos. Bomb squad robots examined the storage unit, confirming it was rigged with enough explosives to level a city block. Elmer had apparently had help from someone with military demolitions experience. The key wouldn't work without both thumbprints, and getting Elmer's body from Mexico would take days of red tape. In the end, they brought in a specialist who spent 6 hours carefully disabling the explosives through a hole drilled in the wall. When they finally opened the unit, they found the 9 missing cases, 54 vials of death, sitting in a refrigerated container like bottles of wine. There was also a laptop with encrypted files detailing the entire operation. Elmer had documented everything. The original theft from the military lab, the buyers lined up across the globe, the network of truckers being used as unwitting mules. My name appeared dozens of times, marked as uninvolved, do not compromise. He'd been trying to protect me even as he was setting me up. The files revealed that Miss White had been middle management. The real operation was run by a consortium of arms dealers across 3 continents. Wellington's employer was just one of many. They'd been planning to distribute the vials globally, selling them to anyone with enough money and a grudge. Clyde found me sitting in the FBI field office, giving my statement for the 5th time. It's over, he said. All the vials are accounted for and will be destroyed. The network has been dismantled. Wellington and his team are cooperating fully. What about the people at the top, the consortium? Being hunted as we speak. Some will be arrested, others will have accidents. The world will be safer either way. And me, Velma, are we safe? Yes. Your involvement is being scrubbed from official records. As far as anyone knows, you were never here. I was definitely here. Dozens of agents saw me. They saw someone. Memory is a funny thing, especially when the right suggestions are made. I stared at him. You're going to make them forget? Not forget, just remember differently. You were a confidential informant who provided crucial intelligence. Your real name will never appear in any report. That's not possible. A lot of things aren't possible, Boyd. Yet here we are. He handed me an envelope. Hazard pay. enough to take a long vacation, maybe a permanent one. Inside was a check for $200,000 from the U.S. Treasury. This is hush money. This is a thank you from a grateful nation. Take it. Take Velma somewhere safe and forget this ever happened. Can I forget? Can any of us? Clyde was quiet for a moment. No, but you can try. I took the check. Velma and I flew back to Houston that night on a government plane. She didn't remember much about her kidnapping or the neural device, which was probably for the best. The official story was that she'd been grabbed by drug dealers who mistook her for someone else, then released when they realized their error. We never talked about what really happened. I quit trucking 2 weeks later. Couldn't do it anymore. Every load felt suspicious, every sealed trailer potentially hiding something terrible. I bought a small auto repair shop with part of the government money, something simple and local where I could see exactly what I was working on. Velma stayed with the trucking company for another month before quitting too. Last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona to be closer to her grandkids. We exchanged Christmas cards, but that's it. Some shared experiences are too dark to maintain friendships around. Wellington disappeared into witness protection, or so Clyde told me in our last conversation. His team was scattered to the winds, given new identities in exchange for their testimony. The consortium members who were caught all died before trial. Heart attacks, suicides, accidents. The convenient kind that keeps secrets buried. But here's the thing that still keeps me awake at night. In all the chaos, all the investigations and interrogations, nobody ever explained how Elmer knew to hide those 9 cases. He was a dock worker with a gambling problem, not a master criminal. Someone told him where they'd be, when they'd arrive, and how to divert them without being caught. Someone who knew about Project Sandstorm before Miss White, before the consortium, maybe even before the weapons were stolen. Someone who used Elmer as a pawn, then let him die when he'd served his purpose. I mentioned this to Clyde once, about 6 months after everything ended. He got very quiet, then said something that chilled me to the bone. Boyd, there are levels to this game you don't want to know about. Elmer was a pawn, yes, but so was Miss White. So was Wellington. So was I. Even the consortium thought they were players when they were really just pieces being moved around a board they couldn't see. By who? The kind of people who think 54 vials of biological weapons are worth sacrificing a few truckers, some criminals, and a handful of government agents. The kind who see chaos as opportunity and death as data points. The government. Bigger than that. Older. The government serves them, not the other way around. He wouldn't say more, but I understood. This whole thing, from the moment Elmer loaded that extra case onto my truck, had been orchestrated. Someone wanted those weapons in circulation just long enough to identify all the potential buyers, then wanted them recovered before they could actually be used. It was a sting operation on a global scale, and we'd all been bait. I still have the burner phone Clyde gave me. It's never rung since that night in El Paso, but I keep it charged. Because someday, somehow, I know it will. And when it does, it'll mean the game is starting again, and they need their pawn back on the board. Until then, I fix cars in my small shop, go home to my empty house, and try not to think about what might be hidden in the trailers rolling past on the highway. Each one could be carrying auto parts or apocalypse, and the drivers would never know until it was too late. That's the real horror of what happened. Not the weapons, or the criminals, or the conspiracy. It's the knowledge that at any moment, any of us could open our trailer doors and find something that will destroy our lives. We're all just hauling cargo, blind to what's really in the back, hoping we make it to our destination before someone decides to inspect the load. And somewhere out there, in a rest area or a truck stop or a warehouse loading dock,
Another driver is about to discover something that doesn't belong. They'll have to make the same choice I did: report it and become a target, or stay quiet and become complicit. God help them if they choose wrong. Because the people moving these dark cargoes through our highways don't forgive, don't forget, and definitely don't leave witnesses. Unless, of course, those witnesses are useful for the next game. I learned that the hard way, parked at a rest area outside Odessa, when I decided to check my load one last time. Sometimes I wish I'd just kept driving, delivered the auto parts with that extra case still hidden inside, and lived in ignorance. But then I remember Elmer, tortured and dead in Juarez. Velma, controlled by that neural device. The 54 vials that almost made it into the wrong hands. And I realized that sometimes ignorance isn't bliss. Sometimes it's just another kind of trap. The name's Virgil. I've been hauling oversized loads across Texas for the better part of 15 years. You know those massive wind turbine blades you see on the highways? The construction beams that take up 2 lanes? That's my specialty. It's good money, but it comes with headaches. Permits, route planning, pilot cars, and most importantly, weight restrictions. Every state has different rules, but Texas is particularly strict about weight limits. Go over by even a few hundred pounds and you're looking at massive fines. That's why weigh stations are such a big deal for drivers like me. We can't just blow past them like some cowboys do. We have to stop, get inspected, and pray everything's in order. This particular story happened last year, middle of July. I was hauling a massive industrial generator from Brownsville up to Lubbock. The thing weighed just under the legal limit with all the permits I had. No room for error. One wrong calculation, one piece of equipment they didn't account for, and I'd be overweight. The inspector at the weigh station just outside Laredo was a man named Earl. I'd dealt with him before over the years. Middle-aged, by-the-book type, never smiled, never made small talk. Just did his job and sent you on your way. That's why what happened next was so out of character. I pulled onto the scales around 3 p.m. Hot as hell, the kind of day where the asphalt looks like water in the distance. Earl came out with his clipboard, same stone face as always. "Afternoon, Virgil," he said, which was weird. He'd never used my first name before, always just driver. "Earl?" I nodded, handing over my paperwork. He looked at it, then at his weight reading, then back at the paperwork. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. "Step into the office," he said. "We need to discuss something." My stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. I followed him inside where the AC was blasting. His supervisor, a woman named Agnes, who I'd only seen a few times, was at her desk but didn't look up. Earl closed the door to the small inspection room and sat down across from me. "You're over," he said simply. "That's impossible. I had this load weighed before I left Brownsville. You're 1,500 pounds over your permitted weight." I stared at him. "There's no way. I haven't added anything to the load." "Scale doesn't lie." He showed me the readout. Sure enough, it showed me over by exactly 1,500 pounds. "Your scale must be off. Calibrated this morning. State inspector verified it yesterday. The fine for being 1,500 pounds overweight would be around $3,000, plus potential suspension of my oversized permits. For an owner-operator like me, that could mean bankruptcy." "Earl, I've been driving this route for 15 years. You know I don't run overweight." He leaned back in his chair, studied me for a moment. "Maybe we can work something out." I blinked. In all my years of driving, I'd never heard an inspector suggest working something out. "What do you mean?" "Scales can be funny things. Environmental factors, temperature variations, calibration drift. Sometimes a second weighing shows different results." "Okay." Of course, recalibrating the scale is time-consuming. Takes me away from other duties.
my supervisor wouldn't be happy about the overtime. He was asking for a bribe. Earl, the straightest arrow in the Texas DOT, was asking for a bribe. "How much overtime are we talking about?" I asked carefully. "Oh, about $500 worth. 500 versus 3,000 plus losing my permits." It was simple math. But it was also illegal. And something about this felt very wrong. "I need to make a phone call," I said. "Check with my company about the situation." "Sure, but make it quick. I've got other trucks to process." I stepped outside and called my dispatcher, but not about the wait. I told him I was being delayed at the weigh station and might be late to Lubbock. Then I called my wife and told her the same thing. I wanted people to know where I was, just in case. When I came back in, Earl was typing something on his computer. "Well?" he asked. "I don't carry that kind of cash." "There's an ATM at the truck stop next door." This was definitely wrong. Earl was being too pushy, too eager. The Earl I knew would never risk his job for $500. "Let me see the scale readout again," I said. He turned his monitor toward me. The numbers were clear, but something caught my eye. The timestamp was from yesterday. "This is from yesterday," I pointed out. Earl's face flushed. "No, the system date is wrong. Computer glitch." "Earl, what's really going on here?" He glanced toward Agnes's desk, then back at me. "Nothing's going on. You're overweight. Pay the fine or pay the overtime. Your choice." "I want a second weighing. Official procedure." "That'll take time." "I've got time." He stared at me for a long moment, then stood up abruptly. "Wait here." He left the room. Through the window, I could see him talking to Agnes. She looked angry, gesturing emphatically. Then she picked up her desk phone and made a call. Earl came back looking defeated. "Go ahead and pull through. You're clear." "What about being overweight?" "Computer error. You're actually under by 200 pounds. That's a 1,700-pound computer error. It happens. Have a safe trip." I knew I should just leave, take the win, and get out of there. But something was very wrong at this weigh station, and my curiosity got the better of me. "Earl, are you in some kind of trouble?" He looked at me with tired eyes. "Just go, Virgil. Please." I left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed something bigger than a simple bribery attempt. Earl had been desperate, but also reluctant. Like someone was forcing him to do this. I made it to Lubbock without further incident, delivered the generator, and picked up a return load of steel beams going to Houston. The route would take me back through the same weigh station. I thought about taking an alternate route, but that would add 100 miles and require new permits. 2 days later, I approached the Laredo weigh station again. This time I had my phone recording in my shirt pocket, just in case. But when I pulled in, Earl wasn't there. A younger inspector I didn't recognize waved me through without even checking my paperwork. "Where's Earl?" I asked. "Called in sick," the kid said. "Been out for 2 days." Agnes was in the office, but she wouldn't make eye contact with me. I pulled through and continued on my way, but I made a mental note to check on Earl when I got home. That night I stopped at a truck stop near Victoria to sleep. Around 2 a.m., someone knocked on my cab door. I grabbed my tire iron and cracked the window. It was Earl, looking haggard and scared. "Virgil, I need to talk to you." "Earl? What the hell are you doing here?" "Can I come in? Please? It's not safe out here." Against my better judgment, I let him climb into the passenger seat. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, and he kept checking the mirrors nervously. "I'm sorry about the other day," he started. "I didn't want to do it." "Do what? Try to bribe me?" "It wasn't my idea. They've got something on me. On Agnes, too." "Who's they?" "I don't know exactly. It started about 6 months ago."
This man, Leroy, came to the station, said he represented certain business interests that needed trucks to pass through without inspection. Drug runners? I don't think so. These were legitimate trucking companies, big ones, but their loads were always overweight or had permit issues, so you were supposed to let them through. For a price. They paid well, really well. At first it seemed harmless, just looking the other way on minor violations. But it escalated? Yeah. Then they wanted us to shake down regular drivers, create problems that didn't exist, collect bribes to make them go away, use that money to pay off other inspectors at other stations. That's a whole network of corruption. It gets worse. The drivers who don't pay, their information gets passed along. Then they have accidents, breakdowns, cargo goes missing. I thought about my own experiences with mysteriously contaminated fuel and tampered engines. How many stations are involved? At least 6 that I know of, maybe more. They're building something, Virgil, a system where they control what moves through Texas. Why are you telling me this? Because you didn't pay, and Agnes got a call today. They're angry. They want to make an example of you. What kind of example? The kind where your truck gets found burned on the side of the road and you're nowhere to be found. My blood ran cold. You're serious? Dead serious. That's why I'm here, to warn you. Don't go home. Don't follow your regular routes. These people have resources you can't imagine. We need to go to the police. Earl laughed bitterly. With what proof? And who do you trust? They've got people everywhere. DOT, state police, local sheriffs. Then what do I do? Disappear for a while. Let them think you got the message. I'm leaving tonight, getting out of Texas. You should do the same. I can't just abandon my life. Better than losing it. He reached for the door handle. There's something else. Agnes isn't part of this willingly. They've got her son. He supposedly died in Afghanistan 3 years ago, but he's alive. They're holding him somewhere, using him as leverage. Jesus Christ. Be careful, Virgil. These people don't make empty threats. He climbed out and disappeared into the darkness between the parked trucks. I sat there for an hour, trying to process what he'd told me. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I started driving. Not toward Houston with my load, but west toward El Paso, Fos. I called my dispatcher from the road, told him I was having mechanical problems and would be delayed. Then I turned off my phone and my truck's GPS tracker. If they were monitoring me, I needed to go dark. I drove through the night, taking back roads when possible, avoiding way stations and inspection points. By dawn, I was in Fort Stockton, exhausted and paranoid. Every vehicle behind me seemed suspicious. Every truck stop felt like a trap. I pulled into a small independent truck stop and paid cash for fuel. The attendant, an old-timer named Hank, noticed my nervousness. "You okay, driver?" "Long night?" I said. "You look like you're running from something." I laughed nervously. "Just running behind schedule." He studied me for a moment. "There's a motel about 5 miles west. Cash only. No questions asked. Owner's a friend of mine. Tell him Hank sent you." I thanked him and found the motel. It was a rundown place that had seen better days. But the owner, true to Hank's word, didn't ask for ID. I paid for 3 nights in advance and collapsed on the bed. I woke up to my phone buzzing. I'd turned it back on out of habit. Dozens of missed calls from my dispatcher, my wife, unknown numbers. But one text stood out from a number I didn't recognize. "You can't run forever. Return the load to Houston or face consequences." They knew where I was going, even with my phone off. They must have other ways of tracking me. Modern trucks have multiple GPS systems, some that can't be disabled without destroying the truck's computer. I called my wife from the motel's landline. "Virgil, where are you? The company's been calling. They're saying you stole the load." "I didn't steal anything. I'm in trouble. Someone's after me." "What are you talking about?" "I can't explain over the phone.
Just stay with your sister for a few days. Don't go home."
"Virgil, you're scaring me."
"Good. Be scared. Be careful. I'll figure this out." I hung up and tried to think. I had a truck full of steel beams that needed to be in Houston yesterday. I had people threatening me if I didn't deliver them, and I had nowhere safe to go. That's when I remembered something Earl had said. They wanted to control what moved through Texas. But what if the cargo itself was the point? What if there was something hidden in my load? I went back to my truck and climbed into the trailer. The steel beams were stacked and secured just as they'd been loaded in Lubbock. But looking closer, I noticed something odd. One of the beams had welding marks that didn't match the others. Newer, sloppier, like something had been added recently. I got my tools and started working on that beam. It took an hour, but I finally got the welded section open. Inside was a hidden compartment, and inside that were packages wrapped in plastic. I didn't need to open them to know what they were. Drugs, probably cocaine or methamphetamine. Dozens of kilos hidden inside the steel beam. Now I understood. This wasn't just about controlling weigh stations. They were using legitimate trucking companies to move drugs, hiding them in oversized loads that required special permits and routes. Loads that had to stop at specific weigh stations where their people could ensure they passed through. And I'd gone off route. I'd disappeared with their drugs. I stood there in my trailer, staring at the drugs, trying to figure out my next move. If I went to the local police, I'd have to explain why I'd driven 300 miles off route with a load that wasn't mine. Best case scenario, they'd think I was trying to steal the drugs myself. Worst case, the corrupt cops Earl had warned me about would make sure I never made it to the station. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Virgil." The voice was calm, professional, nothing like what I'd expected from a drug dealer. "My name is Leroy. I believe Earl mentioned me." "What do you want?" "Simply put, I want my product delivered to Houston. You want to stay alive. These goals don't have to be mutually exclusive. You hid drugs in my load. Technically, they were hidden before it became your load. But yes, there are certain items that need to reach their destination. I'm not a drug runner." "No, you're not. You're a legitimate businessman who's accidentally become involved in something complex. But here's the reality, Virgil. You have two choices. Deliver the load as planned and we all pretend this never happened. Or continue running and things become unpleasant." "You mean you'll kill me?" "Me? No. I'm just a middleman, a facilitator. But the people I work for have invested a lot of money in that shipment. They won't just write it off." "How do I know you won't kill me anyway once I deliver?" "Because you're more valuable alive. A good driver with a clean record who knows how to keep his mouth shut. That's worth more than one shipment. You want me to work for you. I want you to do your job. Haul loads, follow routes, stop at weigh stations. Nothing different from what you've been doing for 15 years. The only change is that sometimes your loads will carry extra cargo. And if I refuse? Then by tomorrow morning, the police will receive an anonymous tip about a truck driver who's been smuggling drugs. They'll find the cocaine in your trailer, your fingerprints on the packages because you touched them just now, and a bank account in your name with suspicious deposits. I don't have any suspicious deposits. You will by morning. Electronic banking is wonderful, isn't it? I was trapped. They'd planned this perfectly. Even if I dumped the drugs and ran, they'd frame me, and running would just make me look guilty. I need time to think, I said. You have until sunrise. After that, we escalate. And Virgil? Your wife is at her sister's house in Corpus Christi, the blue house on Sandpiper Lane, just so we're clear about the stakes. They knew where my wife was. The threat was clear. If you hurt her, no one wants to hurt anyone. This is business. Be professional, and we'll be professional. He hung up.
I stood there in the trailer, phone in my hand, feeling the walls close in. Then I did something that probably saved my life. I took detailed photos of everything: the drugs, the modified beam, the serial numbers on the packages. Then I uploaded them to a cloud account and shared it with 3 people: a lawyer friend in Dallas, a cousin who worked for the FBI in Virginia, and a journalist I'd met years ago who specialized in corruption stories. I included a message: "If something happens to me, this is why." Then I called Leroy back. "I'll deliver the load," I said, "but I have conditions. You're not in a position to negotiate. I've documented everything. Photos, recordings, all of it. It's set to release automatically unless I check in every 12 hours. You kill me, hurt my family, or try to frame me, and every law enforcement agency in Texas gets the whole story." There was a long pause. "You're smarter than most drivers. I've been around long enough to know how these things work." "Fair enough. What are your conditions?" "One run. This one. After I deliver to Houston, I'm out. You never contact me again." "That's not how this works." "It is now. One run, then I disappear. I'll take early retirement, move out of state. You'll never see me again. And if we need you for testimony? If Earl talks?" "Earl's probably in Mexico by now. And if he's smart, he'll stay there." Another pause. "I'll need to discuss this with my employers." "You have 1 hour. Then I'm dumping the drugs and calling the DEA." "That would be unwise." "So would killing me. Mutual assured destruction, Leroy. That's what we've got here." I hung up and waited. 40 minutes later, he called back. "One run. Deliver to Houston, then you're free to go. But if you ever speak about this, if you ever testify, if you ever return to Texas, the deal is off." Agreed. "There's a specific protocol for the delivery. You'll arrive at the Houston terminal at exactly 3 a.m. Park in Bay 7. Leave the trailer unlocked. Go into the office and do your paperwork. When you come out, the extra cargo will be gone." "What about the actual steel beams, the legitimate cargo?" "Those get delivered as normal in the morning. This is just a midnight detour." "And the way stations between here and Houston?" "Avoid them. Take the southern route through Del Rio. No inspection points." "That adds 200 miles. Consider it the price of your retirement." I got back on the road that night, following the route Leroy had specified. Every mile felt like a year. I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see police lights or unmarked cars, but the highway was quiet, just me and the occasional passing truck. The southern route took me through some of the most desolate parts of Texas. Perfect for moving drugs, I realized. Minimal law enforcement, few witnesses, plenty of places to make problems disappear. I stopped once for fuel in Del Rio, paying cash again. The attendant barely looked at me. This was the kind of place where people minded their own business, where asking questions could get you hurt. As I drove through the night, I thought about Earl and Agnes, trapped in this system. How many other inspectors were being controlled? How many drivers were unknowingly hauling drugs? This wasn't just a criminal operation. It was an entire shadow infrastructure, using the legitimate trucking industry as cover. I reached the Houston terminal at 2:45 a.m. The place was mostly empty, just a few yard workers moving trailers around. Bay 7 was in a corner, partially hidden from the main office. Perfect for illegal activity. I parked and unlocked the trailer as instructed, then walked to the office. The night dispatcher, a guy named Jimmy I'd known for years, was surprised to see me. "Virgil? Thought you weren't due until tomorrow afternoon." "Running early. Figured I'd beat the morning traffic." "At 3 a.m.? That's dedicated. Want some coffee while I process your paperwork?" "Sure." I sat in the office for 20 minutes, watching through the window as 2 men in work clothes approached my trailer. They moved with practiced efficiency, unloading something from the back. Within 10 minutes, they were gone, vanishing into the maze of trailers and containers. Jimmy handed me my completed paperwork. "Bay 12 is open if you want to catch some sleep before the morning delivery. Thanks. Think I will. I moved my truck to Bay 12 and climbed into the sleeper. But I didn't sleep. I waited until 6 a.m., then did my official delivery of the steel beams. The receiver checked the load, signed off on it, never noticing that one beam was lighter than it should have been. By 8 a.m., I was on the road back to San Antonio, where my car was parked at the company yard. I turned in my truck keys to the dispatcher, told him I was taking some time off for family issues. "How long?" he asked. "Not sure. Maybe permanent. I'm getting too old for this." "Virgil, you're 52. 52 is old in trucking years." He shrugged. "Well, if you change your mind, you know we'll always have a spot for you." I drove home, packed what I could fit in my car, and met my wife in Corpus Christi. I told her everything. She didn't believe me at first, thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Then I showed her the photos, played her the recordings. "We need to go to the police," she said. "With what? The drugs are gone. Leroy and his people have probably disappeared. And Earl was right. We don't know who to trust. So we just run? We relocate. I've got money saved. We can start over in Colorado, maybe Montana, somewhere far from Texas." "What about our life here? Our friends?" "Our life here includes people who threaten to kill us. I'll take alive in Montana over dead in Texas." She wasn't happy, but she understood. We left that night, driving in shifts, putting as much distance between us and Texas as possible. We ended up in Wyoming, a small town where nobody knew us and nobody asked questions. I found work at a local freight company handling logistics instead of driving. It paid less, but it was safe. No way stations, no mysterious cargo, no threats. Just paperwork and scheduling. For 6 months, everything was quiet. We started to build a new life. My wife found work at a medical clinic. We bought a small house. I almost believed we'd escaped. Then Agnes called. I didn't recognize the number, but when I heard her voice, my blood went cold. "Virgil? It's Agnes, from the Laredo station." "How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. I need your help." "I can't help you. I'm out." "They still have my son." "Agnes, please. Earl's dead. They found him in Mexico last month. Said it was a robbery, but I know better. You're the only one left who knows what really happened. If Earl's dead, that's even more reason for me to stay away. They're expanding, Virgil. Not just Texas anymore. They're moving into New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado. Wyoming's probably next. My new home state. They were coming here." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Testimony. The FBI is building a case, but they need witnesses. Someone who saw the whole operation." "The FBI? How do I know they're not compromised too?" "Because the agent in charge is my brother. He's been investigating this for 2 years, but he needed an inside source. That's why I stayed at the station gathering evidence." "You were undercover?" "Not officially. My brother couldn't get authorization for a family member. But when they took my son, or when I thought they'd taken him, I had to do something." "You said thought?" "My son really did die in Afghanistan. They just used his death, made me believe he was alive, showed me doctored photos. It was all a lie to control me. Jesus, Agnes, I'm sorry. Help me stop them, Virgil, before they destroy more lives." I thought about the quiet life I'd built in Wyoming, the safety of anonymity, the peace of not looking over my shoulder. Then I thought about Earl, dead in Mexico, about all the drivers still hauling drugs without knowing it, about Leroy and his network spreading across the country like a cancer. "What would I have to do?" I asked. "Meet with my brother. Tell him everything. Your photos, your recordings, they could break this case wide open. Leroy will kill me. He'll try, but the FBI can protect you. Witness protection if necessary." "I'm already in my own witness protection." "And how long will that last when they expand into Wyoming?" When every way station, every truck stop, every freight company is under their control. She was right. Running hadn't solved anything, just delayed the inevitable. These people wouldn't stop until they controlled everything or were stopped themselves. When? I asked. Tomorrow. My brother can fly to Wyoming tonight. Meet him, hear what he has to say. If you don't want to help after that, at least you'll have tried. I agreed to the meeting. Agnes's brother, Special Agent Tom Rivers, turned out to be nothing like what I'd expected from an FBI agent. Soft-spoken, patient. He looked more like an accountant than a federal investigator. We met at a diner in Cheyenne, neutral ground where I felt safe. He listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in a small notebook. When I showed him the photos and played the recordings, his expression grew grim. "This is bigger than we thought," he said. "We knew about the way station corruption, but the drug smuggling, the hidden compartments, that's new intelligence. How many people are involved?" "At least 40 that we've identified, probably 3 times that in reality. They've compromised inspectors, dispatchers, law enforcement, even some DOT officials in Austin." "And Leroy?" "Leonard Roy Jackson, former military intelligence, started working for the cartels 5 years ago. He's the architect of this whole system." "Can you stop him?" "With your testimony, yes. You're the only one who's dealt directly with him and lived to tell about it." "Earl dealt with him." "Earl's dead. So are 3 other potential witnesses. You're it, Virgil." The weight of that settled on my shoulders. I was the only one who could stop this, but doing so would paint a massive target on my back. "What about my wife?" I asked. "We can protect both of you. New identities, new location, completely fresh start." "That's what I have now." "No, you have a hiding place. There's a difference. We can give you a life where you don't have to look over your shoulder. And all I have to do is testify against violent criminals who've already killed multiple witnesses? All you have to do is tell the truth." I told Tom I needed a week to think about it. He gave me his card and a secure phone, said to call when I'd made my decision. But the decision was made for me 3 days later when my wife didn't come home from work. Her car was still in the clinic parking lot. Her purse was in her office. But she was gone. The security cameras showed her walking to her car at 5:15 p.m. Then nothing. Like she'd vanished into thin air. My phone rang at 6 p.m. exactly. "Hello, Virgil." Leroy's voice was calm as ever. "I believe we had an agreement." "Where is she?" "Safe, for now. But you've been talking to people you shouldn't be talking to." "I haven't told them anything. Agent Rivers seems to think differently. He's been quite excited since meeting with you, preparing warrants, organizing task forces. That suggests you gave him something substantial." "Just old information, nothing current." "Virgil, lying doesn't suit you. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Agent Rivers and tell him you've reconsidered, that you were mistaken about what you saw, that the stress of the situation made you imagine things. He won't believe that. Make him believe it. Then you're going to return to Texas, tonight. You said I could never return to Texas. Plans change. We need you to make one more run." "No, we had a deal." "We did, but you broke it when you met with the FBI. Now there are consequences. If you hurt her." "No one wants to hurt anyone, Virgil. This is just business. You have 6 hours to be on the road to Texas. There's a truck waiting for you at the Cheyenne terminal. The dispatcher has your assignment." "What assignment?" "You're hauling industrial equipment from Denver to Brownsville. A legitimate load with all the proper permits. You'll make your delivery, then your wife will be released." "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "You don't, but what choice do you have?" He hung up. I immediately called Tom Rivers. "They have my wife," I said. "When?" "This afternoon. They want me to recant my statement and make another run." "Don't do it. Let us handle this. You don't understand. They'll kill her. They'll kill both of you regardless. These people don't leave witnesses." Then what do I do? Come to the federal building. We'll protect you and find your wife. But I knew they wouldn't find her in time. Leroy's network was too extensive, too well hidden. By the time the FBI mobilized, my wife would be dead. So I made a different choice. I went to the Cheyenne terminal. The truck was waiting, just as Leroy had said. A brand new Peterbilt with a 53-foot trailer already loaded. The dispatcher, a nervous-looking kid, handed me the paperwork without making eye contact. "Everything's in order," he said. "Just need your signature." I signed and climbed into the cab. The route was already programmed into the GPS, Denver to Brownsville via Amarillo, but I knew there would be detours, stops that weren't on the official manifest. I called Tom Rivers from the road. "I'm making the run," I said. "Virgil, don't. Track this truck. GPS, satellite, whatever you have. Follow me, but stay back. This is our chance to catch them in the act. This isn't how we do things. It's how we're doing it now. They have my wife. I'm not letting her die. At least wear a wire. They'll check for that. Just track me and be ready." I drove through the night, following the prescribed route. The load felt normal, no signs of tampering, but I knew the drugs were there somewhere, hidden in ways I couldn't detect. The first deviation came near Amarillo. The GPS directed me off the highway to an abandoned rest area. 2 men were waiting, both armed. They searched me thoroughly, found the FBI phone, destroyed it. "Leroy wants to make sure you're not wearing a wire," one said, making me strip to my underwear. After they were satisfied, they handed me a new phone. "Leroy will call with instructions." They left and I continued driving. The phone rang an hour later. "Good boy," Leroy said. "Your wife is comfortable. Keep following instructions and she'll stay that way." What's really in this load? Does it matter? Just drive. The next stop was a weigh station near Lubbock, but instead of pulling onto the scales, I was directed to a maintenance area behind the main building. Agnes was there, looking haggard and defeated. "Hello, Virgil," she said quietly. "Agnes? What are you doing here?" "Same thing you are. Following orders to save someone I love." "Your son is dead. You said—" "My brother, Tom. They grabbed him yesterday." "The FBI agent. They had him too." "This is bigger than just cargo, isn't it?" I asked. Agnes nodded. "They're moving something major. All their routes are active tonight. Dozens of trucks, all converging on the border." "What are they moving?" "I don't know, but Leroy's here personally. That never happens unless it's critical." As if summoned by his name, Leroy appeared from the building. He was smaller than I'd imagined, maybe 5'8", thin, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Virgil," he said pleasantly. "So good to finally meet in person. Where's my wife?" "Close. You'll see her soon. But first we need to discuss your cargo." "What about it?" "You're not carrying drugs. That would be too predictable, too risky with the FBI watching." "Then what?" "People, Virgil. You're carrying people." My stomach turned. Human trafficking? Such an ugly term. I prefer refugee relocation. These are people who've paid substantial sums to enter the country. Businessmen, professionals, people with skills and resources. It's still illegal. So is jaywalking. The difference is scale and perspective. "How many?" "In your trailer? 12. Across all our trucks tonight? Nearly 300. 300 people being smuggled across the border in a single night, using the legitimate trucking industry as cover." "They'll suffocate," I said, thinking about 12 people locked in my trailer. "The trailer's been modified. Hidden compartment with ventilation. They'll be uncomfortable but alive." "And what happens to them?" "They're delivered to their sponsors, people who've paid for their arrival. Then they disappear into America, become productive members of society. Or slaves, sex workers, organ donors." Leroy shrugged. "I'm just transportation. What happens after delivery isn't my concern." You're a monster. I'm a businessman, and you're my employee, whether you like it or not. I won't do it. Then your wife dies, Agent Rivers dies, Agnes dies, and you die. In that order, so you can watch. He pulled out a tablet, showed me a video feed. My wife was in a small room, tied to a chair, but apparently unharmed. Tom Rivers was in another room, similar restraints. One phone call, Leroy said, and they're gone. I had no choice. I got back in the truck and continued driving. But now I knew the FBI was tracking me, and I knew what was at stake. 300 people being trafficked. My wife and Tom Rivers being held hostage, and me in the middle of it all. The route took me through several more checkpoints, each one staffed by people on Leroy's payroll. Inspectors who looked the other way, cops who provided escort through tricky areas. The network was even more extensive than Tom Rivers had thought. As I approached the border crossing at Brownsville, my phone rang. "There's been a change of plans," Leroy said. "The border's too hot tonight. Too much CBP activity. You're going to a transfer point instead." The GPS updated, directing me to an industrial area east of Brownsville. Warehouses and manufacturing plants, mostly closed at this hour. The perfect place for illegal transfers. I pulled into a large warehouse complex. The doors were open, lights on inside. Several other trucks were already there, drivers standing nervously by their rigs. Leroy was waiting, along with a dozen armed men. "Excellent timing," he said. "The transfer will take about an hour. Then you're free to go." "My wife?" "Will be released as soon as the cargo is successfully transferred." I watched as teams of men opened the trailers, revealing hidden compartments I hadn't even known existed. People started emerging, cramped, scared, but alive. Men, women, even some children. They were herded into other vehicles, sorted by some system I didn't understand. That's when I heard the helicopters. Leroy's head snapped up, his calm demeanor cracking for the first time. "Everybody move, now!" he shouted. But it was too late. The warehouse was surrounded. FBI, DEA, Border Patrol, even Texas Rangers. They came from everywhere at once, weapons drawn, shouting commands. I hit the ground as gunfire erupted. Leroy's men tried to fight back, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. The whole thing was over in minutes. Tom Rivers appeared, wearing tactical gear despite his mild appearance. "You okay, Virgil?" "You were free? This was all a setup?" "Not exactly. They did grab me, but my team extracted me 6 hours ago. We've been tracking you and every other truck in the network." "My wife?" "Safe. We found her 2 hours ago. She's at the Federal Building." I wanted to collapse with relief, but there was still chaos around us. People being arrested, victims being processed, evidence being collected. "Where's Leroy?" I asked. Tom's expression darkened. "Gone. He slipped out during the raid, but we got most of his network. 43 arrests so far. He'll come after me." "No, he won't. Leroy's smart. He knows when an operation is blown. He'll disappear, resurface somewhere else with a new identity and a new scheme. So he just gets away with it? For now. But we've dismantled his Texas network, saved 300 people from trafficking. That's a win." Agnes appeared, looking relieved but exhausted. "It's over," she said. "Your testimony did this," Tom told me. "Both of you. Without inside witnesses, we never could have coordinated this raid." Over the next few hours, I watched as the full scope of the operation was revealed. The modified trailers with hidden compartments, the network of corrupt officials, the routes designed to avoid inspection. It was brilliant in its complexity and terrifying in its scope. I gave my statement to a dozen different agencies, each one wanting details about different aspects of the operation. By dawn, I was exhausted but relieved. It was over. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later, while my wife and I were in witness protection in Maine, I got a package. No return address, no postmark.
Inside was a single photo of Leroy standing in front of what looked like a truck stop. On the back, someone had written, "Thanks for the education. Version 2.0 will be better." He was still out there, learning from his mistakes, planning his next move. Tom Rivers, who'd become something of a friend through all this, tried to reassure me. "We're watching for him," he said. "The moment he surfaces, we'll know." "He's too smart for that." "Maybe, but you beat him once. If he comes back, you'll beat him again." "I'm not a cop. I'm just a trucker." "You're a trucker who brought down one of the biggest trafficking operations in Texas history. That's not nothing." Maybe he was right, but late at night, when I heard trucks passing on the distant highway, I wondered how many of them were carrying hidden cargo. How many drivers were unknowingly part of some new network, some new scheme. The official report said we'd saved 300 people and arrested 43 criminals. But it also noted that at least a dozen key players had escaped, including Leroy. They were out there somewhere, planning, adapting, evolving. Agnes went back to work at a different way station, this time as an official FBI liaison. She said she wanted to make sure it never happened again. I admired her courage, but I couldn't do it. The trucking industry had been my life for 15 years, but now I couldn't look at a semi without wondering what might be hidden inside. My wife and I settled into our new life in Maine. I found work at a marina, fixing boats instead of trucks. It was peaceful, honest work. No hidden compartments, no secret cargo, no one threatening my family. But sometimes, usually when fog rolls in off the Atlantic, I think about that night in the warehouse. 300 scared people emerging from hidden compartments. Leroy's calm voice explaining how the world really works. The sound of helicopters and gunfire. I know he's out there somewhere, probably running the same scheme in a different state or country. Men like Leroy don't quit, they just relocate. And there's always another desperate trucker, another corrupt official, another route to exploit. The FBI says I'm safe, that Leroy has bigger problems than revenge. But I keep a gun in my bedside drawer and security cameras around my house. Because I know the truth about the trucking industry now. I know what moves in those trailers alongside legitimate cargo. I know how easy it is to compromise good people with threats and bribes. And I know that somewhere out there right now, a trucker is being approached at a way station. Someone's offering them money to look the other way, to carry something extra, to take a different route. Most will say no, but some, desperate or greedy or scared, will say yes, and the whole thing will start all over again. 6 months passed in Maine without incident. The marina job was good. The people were friendly, and my wife had found work at a local hospital. We'd even started talking about buying a house, putting down real roots for the first time since leaving Texas. That's when Earl appeared. I was working on a fishing boat's engine when I looked up and saw him standing on the dock. Earl, who was supposed to be dead in Mexico. "You're dead," I said, dropping my wrench. That was the idea. But plans change. He looked different, thinner, older, with a beard. But those tired eyes were the same. "Agnes is dead, Virgil. 3 weeks ago. Official cause was a car accident, but her brother Tom doesn't believe it. Why kill her now? She found something. Project Highway. Complete takeover of the commercial transportation industry." We met Tom Rivers in Boston the next day. He showed us financial records Agnes had discovered. Shell companies buying trucking companies across the country, positioning themselves to control new mandatory electronic logging devices. "Control the software, control every truck in America," Tom explained. "We need someone inside," Tom said. "One of their companies is hiring an operations manager in Hartford." I took the job, playing the role of a bitter ex-trucker betrayed by the FBI. My supervisor, Dennis, tested me with small crimes first, falsified inspections, deleted GPS records.
Each time I documented everything for Tom. Then Dennis invited me to meet the real boss in Boston. When I walked into that high-rise conference room and saw who it was, my heart stopped. Leroy. "Surprised?" he asked. "I know you're working with the FBI, Virgil, but we have a common enemy." He explained that Project Highway would destroy even criminal operations like his. The real players were planning to crash the transportation system in 6 weeks, then offer emergency management to the government. "There's a meeting tomorrow, international waters. Everyone involved will be there. I can get you in with a wire." Against all logic, I agreed. The yacht meeting was surreal. 23 conspirators planning economic terrorism while I recorded everything. When it was over, Leroy handed me the evidence and disappeared to Costa Rica. The FBI moved immediately. 23 arrests, 15 companies seized, Project Highway destroyed. Tom called me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I'd partnered with a criminal to stop worse criminals. My wife and I moved to Oregon with new identities. I work in a hardware store now. Simple, honest work. But sometimes I still check the news, wondering when someone will try again. Because controlling transportation means controlling everything. The last time Earl called, he said the industry was recovering but vulnerable. "They'll try again," he warned. "Different plan, same goal." He's right. But I'm done fighting that war. I did my part, saved lives, stopped a conspiracy. That has to be enough. Because every time I hear air brakes hiss, I remember that weak station outside Laredo where this all started. Where Earl tried to bribe me for $500 and accidentally revealed something worth billions. Sometimes the biggest conspiracies start with the smallest crimes. And sometimes, to stop them, you have to become what you hate. Work with criminals. Betray trust. Compromise everything. I live with those choices. My wife understands mostly. The hardware store customers don't need to know their cashier once wore a wire on a yacht full of terrorists. Late at night, I wonder if Leroy's still in Costa Rica, if Dennis is in prison or made a deal, if Tom Rivers ever found all the shell companies. But mostly, I try to forget. Try to pretend trucks are just trucks. Highways are just roads, and way stations are just places to check cargo weight, not recruitment centers for economic warfare. The truth is darker. The infrastructure we depend on is vulnerable. The people we trust to maintain it can be corrupted. And sometimes the only heroes available are people like me. Ordinary truckers who stumble into extraordinary danger. I hope there are others ready to step up when the next conspiracy emerges, because it will emerge. The temptation to control transportation is too powerful, the potential profit too massive. But it won't be me. I've paid my dues, risked my life, lost my career, saved the country, even if nobody knows it. Now I just want to sell hardware, go home to my wife, live quietly in Oregon where nobody knows who Virgil really was or what he really did. The way station bribery attempt that started everything seems almost quaint now. $500 to look the other way. If only Earl had known he was a tiny cog in a massive machine. If only I'd driven past that day, ignored my inspection requirements. But I didn't. I stopped. I got involved. And because of that, Project Highway failed. That's my only consolation. Somewhere out there, trucks are still delivering food, medicine, essentials. The economy still functions. People still trust the supply chain. They don't know how close it all came to collapsing. How a few criminals nearly weaponized the entire transportation industry. How a trucker named Virgil and a criminal named Leroy formed an unlikely alliance to stop them. And that's fine. Heroes don't need recognition. They just need to know they made a difference. I made a difference. Now someone else can stand watch. Someone else can infiltrate the conspiracies, wear the wires, risk their lives. I'm just Virgil, hardware store employee, living quietly in Oregon with his wife. The nightmares are less frequent now. The paranoia is fading. Sometimes I even forget to check if I'm being followed.